for the delay. We are now in order. And if we can have Father John Manuel from the St. Nicholas Greek Orthodox Church come forward and give us the invocation.
O Heavenly King, O Comforter, the Spirit of truth, present in all places and filling all things, the treasury of blessings and the giver of life, come, abide in us, cleanse us of every stain, O gracious Lord, and save our souls. Dear and sovereign Lord, we praise you and we give glory to our holy and majestic name. We give thanks to you for providing our good city with sound and capable leadership. And so today we ask and pray that you empower your servants, the mayor and city council and all their associates, with the wisdom of your good counsel. Help them to use good judgment in their deliberations, that they may fulfill their duties according to your justified will. For every good and perfect gift comes from above, including the privilege to provide service to the greater community. And while there are many difficult decisions to make in this meeting and in the meetings that follow, let your faithful be at ease, for you are with them. Let them know that you watch over them and that your angels guard our diverse and lively neighborhoods. For we call upon you now to give your servants compassion, that they may enact healing in our city, and peace of mind to exert vision in every darkened corner. Let them step forward as agents of your grace and as ambassadors of your kindness. For you are the one who blesses and strengthens and who provides this great opportunity to serve others. And to you we give glory, thanksgiving, worship, to the most exalted name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit, now and forever, and to the ages of ages. Amen.
Amen. Thank you. Pledge of allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you all. Madam Clerk, we have the roll call.
Yes, sir. All present excluding Miss Wilson, who's on family vacation.
Okay, could I have a motion for certification of the closed session?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion second. The vote is open.
By a vote of 10-0, you certified the closed session to be in accordance with a motion to recess.
Okay, do I have a motion to approve the minutes of the informal and formal sessions of June 4th, 2019?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, vote is open.
By a vote of 10-0, you have approved the minutes as submitted.
Okay, declare a public hearing on the creation of a Special Service District, SSD, Shilling Point Neighborhood Dredging Project.
We have one speaker, Barbara Messner.
Welcome, Barbara.
I thought y'all usually read it and then you went back to it, so I wasn't quite ready. Anyway, these special districts, they're brand new taxing districts. We have $2 billion in debt. We have unfunded pension plans, unfunded health care. Our police and first responders come before you all the time, asking for help. And I just think that we shouldn't have special taxing districts and more taxes on everyone. And I want to bring up the fact that, we haven't been able to call and discuss this with everyone out of respect for the victims. And I wrote y'all and I asked you please not to have the meeting June 4th because we couldn't get in touch with anyone, including staff. So, I also asked that those votes be vacated because you shouldn't have held that meeting. We couldn't, discuss it with you. And anyway, I'm opposed to the taxing districts. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
That's all the speakers.
Okay, we'll move on. Mr. Vice Mayor, can we do the consent agenda, please?
So, Ms. Messner, do you want to speak on the ordinances as well for Shilling Point? Or did you just want to speak under the public hearing? You signed up for both.
I'll speak again then, thank you. But not right now.
But it'll be the first item they call. So are you going to speak again?
I'll wait.
I don't know what that means.
So does that mean
So-
you want to speak or not?
Well, not yet.
Not yet.
We're doing the consent agenda. That's why I need to know if you want to speak on this item for the ordinances.
Yes, I do.
Okay, so keep it pulled.
Thanks. All right, Mr. Mayor, I move for approval under the consent agenda the following items under ordinances, resolutions. Item I-2, ordinance to add city code section 18-108.3, raise certain mobile food units. Item 6, ordinance to appoint 3 viewers for 1-year terms beginning July 1, 2019, regarding viewing streets and alleys proposed to be altered or vacated. Item 8, ordinance to authorize and accept a donation regarding use of office space at 2875 Sabre Street from 2700 International Parkway Corporation for a period of 1 year with the option to extend for 2 1-year terms, A, Suite 250, B, Suite 500. Item 9, ordinance to transfer $40,000 within Public Works FY 18-19 operating budget regarding the purchase of thermoplastic paint kettles, $330,000 from the Police Department FY 18-19 operating budget to the Fire Department operating budget regarding overtime expenses, $130,000 juvenile probation within the FY 18-19 operating budget for contingencies, and $20,000 from the general fund reserve for contingencies to support juvenile dispositional court services. D, $1.5 million from the Police Department and Public Works FY 18-19 budgets and amend the scope of Capital Improvement Project 3-149, the various buildings rehab and renewal 4, regarding support expenses from the May 31st, 2019 tragedy. Item 10, ordinance to appropriate $600,000 of fund balance from the Sheriff's Office Special Revenue Fund to the Sheriff's Office FY 18-19 operating budget regarding payroll obligations and medical expenses.
Okay, declare a public hearing on planning.
For planning, item J1, Indian Cove Resort Association Incorporated for modification of conditions, Ray Overflow Parking or relocation of pavilion within the campground at 1053 Sandbridge Road in the Princess Anne District. Item 2, Timberlake Shopping Center Associates LLC for an amendment to the Timberlake PDH1 land use plan regarding adding an indoor recreational facility over 7,500 square feet is permitted use at 4239 Holland Road, District 3, Rose Hall. Item 3, DML Designs LLC trading as Trinity Tattoo Company, Mishurim Gold VAB LP for a conditional use permit regarding a tattoo parlor and body piercing establishment at 2720 North Mall Drive, Suites 112 and 116 in the Rose Hall District. AT Associates LLP for a conditional use permit regarding a car wash facility at 2677 Virginia Beach Boulevard in the Beach District. Item 5, Josephine P. Parker for a conditional use permit regarding automobile repair garage and a modification of conditions regarding bulk storage yard at 573 Central Drive, District 6, Virginia Beach, and note that's a consent for deferral to August 6. Item 6, Mishurim Gold VAB LP for a conditional use permit regarding indoor recreational facility at 2720 North Mall Drive, Suite 100, District 3, Rose Hall, and that's consent for deferral to August 6th. Item 7, ordinances to amend city zoning ordinance, A, Section 103 regarding notification to property owners, B, Section 107 regarding time limitations for city council referral of zoning amendments to planning commission for action. So moved, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, do we have a second?
Second.
All right, vote is open on the consent agenda.
By a vote of 10-0, you've approved the consent agenda as read by Vice Mayor Wood.
Okay, we will now go to the other items. I want to remind everyone that the city council speaker policy that allows certain representatives of groups to speak for 10 minutes applies only to planning items. As to all other items on the agenda, each speaker, whether speaking individually or on behalf of a group, will have 3 minutes to speak. Also, when speakers are called on each item, the clerk will call for those individuals who have signed up to speak. After those who have signed up to speak have spoken, the chair will ask if there are any other persons who wish to speak on the item at hand. Those speakers will be allowed to speak and will be asked to give their name, address, and telephone numbers to the clerk. And just going forward, we live in some tough and challenging times. Let's become the example of mutual respect and civility. We welcome what everybody has to say, and I would appreciate that very much. First item, ordinances R.A. Shilling Point neighborhood dredging.
We have one speaker, Barbara Messner.
Good evening. As I said, I don't think you should be voting because we weren't able to get in touch with anybody. I would certainly have objected, and there's just too much going on. This is a tax levy and for CIP. And I tried to do FOIA requests, and, you know, those were extended 7 days. So how can anything be done in a timely manner? It's usually 5 days if the city, you know, I can't believe Rosemary Wilson left to be on vacation at this time. But I wrote to Mr. Stiles, Mr. Hanson, Ms. Ellis, who's already moved to another department, and Mr. Ingram. I strongly object to the after-the-fact request for more time to apply for my FOIA. Somebody said they couldn't hear me. And cancel the June 4th council meeting. I ask you to honor the victims and the victim families and the city workers who are extremely traumatized. The stories that we're hearing are unbelievable. It had only been 3.5 days after the shootings. Several items on today's June 18th agenda should be deferred. We have not had an opportunity to speak to our elected officials and city staff. There have been funerals, memorials, and investigations ongoing. A full investigation should take several months, not a few weeks. And I wasn't even ready to come to a council meeting. Normally I would come. But this is to honor and remember. These are the 12 victims. And I strongly object. I don't know if you've looked online. All the people are using your altered city seal, which you shouldn't even be using for fundraisers. And there's all kinds of fundraisers out there. You know, hashtag and a billboard with King Neptune. I just think that's totally disrespectful.
Ms. Mesner, with
Yes.
due respect, can you stick to the item that we're talking about?
I am sticking to the item. It's due process, their First and 14th Amendment. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Move approval, item I1, A and B.
Okay, do we have a second?
Second.
By a vote of 9-0 with Mr. Jones abstaining, you have approved the ordinances regarding Shilling Point neighborhood dredging.
Okay, next
Mr.
item.
Mayor,
Yes.
I abstain because I have a piece of property, my residence, it's within the Shilling Point project, and the city clerk or city attorney advised me that by disclosing I could vote on it, but I chose not to vote on it to avoid any appearance of impropriety.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, next item, resolutions to direct city manager to, A, development. Mr. Moss, are we deferring that?
This is indefinite deferral.
We do have a,
think
we
we
do
have-
We
have,
have a speaker?
Yes, we do.
Okay, we do have a
one
speaker.
One speaker is Barbara Messner. 3A. 3A.
And B.
We did it together.
Good evening. The 6-week family leave requested by Mr. Moss. Mr. Moss, you've been here since the 80s. You know, all of this could have been done a long time ago, and we have debt. And you were for the arena, $78 million, which is now going to the sports center. I just think the priorities are wrong. We have the money, and we should be taking care of all of our employees. That's all I have to say.
Thank you. Ready?
I move for deferral, and the reason why we are deferring this is to build a broader consensus in the community and get community feedback. But it is something that I do support and will be bringing back at the appropriate time. But I move indefinite deferral.
Second.
Second.
Okay, vote is open.
By a vote of 10-0, you have deferred indefinitely ordinance to, a resolution to direct the city manager to, for 6 weeks paid leave, sorry.
Okay, Part B is to evaluate and recommend RA replementation, enhanced security for city buildings, requested by Councilmember Wooten.
The first speaker is Travis Fox, and then the second speaker will be Barbara Messner.
Welcome, sir.
Welcome. Thank you for the welcome. I thought this item had been pulled.
This is what you're speaking on.
Okay.
This is what we talked to you about out
Yeah,
there.
you told me this item was pulled and we were going to 1 to 5.
It was pulled from the consent agenda.
Oh, okay. All right, now I understand. I apologize. Ladies and gentlemen, and honorable councilmen, members, I come before you to speak on the regrettable and preventable tragedy that occurred on May 31. Our city was shaken to its core, and we have been left with more questions than answers in the wake of an act of senseless violence. But it has come to my attention that some in this room would have us believe that this is the fault of a gun, of an inanimate object without thought or conscience, which has caused this tragedy. Still others would like to take it a step further and blame all gun owners for the crimes of another. Both the Bill of Rights and the Virginia Constitution are very clear on this subject. Shall not be infringed. And yet here we are once again hearing that for our own good, we must give up some of our liberties to what amounts to security theater. I'm appalled. I'm appalled not only that such a solution would even be considered, but that for an elected representative to pose such a suggestion makes them unfit for office. I've lived in Virginia Beach and worked here all of my life. I've watched this council do and say things that I have not necessarily agreed with, and it's tested my resolve and my patience. Many of them go against what I believe as a citizen and a businessman. I'm a registered surveyor and an entrepreneur. Many of the people in this room, as well as many of the members of this council, know me or know my work. As a consequence of the type of work that I do, I am frequently in city buildings, most often Building 2, making submittals, doing research, discussing projects, and consulting with clients and colleagues on projects within the city of Virginia Beach. I've carried nearly every day for 20 years, and I have carried every time I've been in Building 2. It has never been a problem. I was supposed to be there Friday, May 31. After the shooting, I received numerous phone calls from clients and friends asking if I was okay because they knew I was supposed to be there that afternoon. The simple fact is I was not prepared to go in there that afternoon and didn't make it. I should have been there. And if I had been there, I would have been the only other armed person in the building. The other person, everyone else was disarmed because of policy, not law. Virginia Beach policy as much killed those people as the man with the gun. Disarming lawful citizens does not prevent crime. It empowers criminals. As an employee, he knew that no one would be armed, and he would experience zero resistance from his former coworkers. Several people have told me they wished I had been there. I'm glad that I wasn't, but they wished I would because they knew that I would be the only one between that man. I want to reiterate something that many of us have said in the past, and that this is not a gun problem. Making it more difficult for law-abiding, honest, decent folk to do business with and in Virginia Beach because it makes you feel safe is not the solution. It's not a gun problem. It's a problem of a condition of the human heart. Disarming employees and honest men and women who work in this community will not bring those people back, and it will not make this city better. Thank you.
Thank you.
The next speaker, Barbara Messner. And after Ms. Messner is Diana Howard.
Okay. I totally agree with the gentleman that just spoke. And I'm really surprised. When Miss Abbott ran, she had some group, Badass, excuse my French, sorry, but that's the name of her group, and she's all about gun rights. She ran as an independent, and then she switched. But, you know, there are like eight police officers, I think, plus I think Mr. Dyer and Louis Sessoms had 3 armed police officers. We've been like 85 officers short all the time. Our police do an amazing job considering that they're understaffed and they have to do crowd control at the oceanfront. You didn't slow down, you know, the events at the oceanfront. And, you know, I requested another tent. I was going to volunteer and pay for a tent to cover the memorial. It's just, but also, Ms. Wooten, you were kind enough, you know, I opposed the police brewery near my neighborhood because of the problems there, and I think that there's better things we can do with their money, because all the breweries are taxpayer subsidized, over $4 million in taxpayer subsidies, and I think we should have, you know, a gym or something there for our police officers. So not only could that gentleman who just spoke have protected other people, he would feel more safe knowing that there was no security in that building. So, thank you.
Thank you.
Diana Howard, and after Ms. Howard is Virginia Wasserberg.
Welcome.
Hi, good evening, everyone. In response to the tragedy in Virginia Beach, it is only human that you would react to the pain and suffering and want to do something to help. But I want to remind you what Chief Serrera said. No law would have prevented this crime. The city already had a policy against bringing a gun to work, but the shooter didn't care. He didn't obey that policy. In fact, he even counted on his fellow co-workers to obey it. And had Ms. Nixon disobeyed that, she might be alive today if her constitutional right to protect herself had not been taken away with that policy. Instead, she waited to be saved by police officers who were there in record time, and they were in pursuit of the shooter like that. But he had something that they didn't have. He had key card access. He could get into secure places that they could not. They lost precious time in getting to them to save their lives. But here you want to have more security for these offices, metal detectors, full body searches, police officer at every entrance. What security measure would have protected them, and from whom? It was not the public that came there to do business that day that committed this crime. It was one of them. It was a co-worker, somebody they knew, somebody they seen every day for years. Sure, a metal detective would have detected a metal weapon, but evil always finds a way. If there was a metal detector there, he might have used something else, maybe plastic explosive, maybe poison. I don't know, maybe he would have waited for them to come out and shot him if he was intent on killing. So, what I'm going to say is, instead of addressing the means he used to commit this crime, why aren't we looking at the underlying cause and addressing that, right? Why did he do this? Why did he turn on his fellow coworkers? I think we need that independent investigation that the families and the victims are calling for. They need those answers. They need that closure. We need to address those solutions. We need not to turn the buildings into a fortress against its own people. We need to remember who we are here and be Virginia strong.
Thank you.
Next speaker is Virginia Wasserberg.
Good evening. I have a resolution in front of me, and I want to say I am in favor of the resolution directing the city manager to evaluate and recommend for implementation enhanced security at city buildings. Lines 8, 9, and 10 talk about including the installation of metal detectors and the presence of law enforcement or security officers at all city buildings. Line 12 talks about that consideration must also be given to the cost of these measures. Line 15 says that the city council, which would be all of you, need additional information in order to make informed decisions. As a resident of Virginia Beach, I want you to have that additional information because I need you to make an informed decision. I frequent this building. as well as a lot of other people that I know and care about. And we need security. If my daughter was with me today, what would stop her from being shot right now? As I stand right here, if my 5-year-old daughter was with me, we need security. What, if I carried a gun on my hip, would that protect her from somebody who just wants to take her out by my side? We need security. In fact, today in Dallas, it is reported that today, the headline says, heavily armed gunman shot dead outside federal courthouse in Dallas. Outside. Because there's security. Now, I respect the Second Amendment very much. My husband owns a gun, and I'm not afraid of using it or carrying it. In fact, I've spent time using it. And I don't want you to take that away from me to be able to use it, and this resolution doesn't do that. It says that the city manager can evaluate enhanced security measures, lines 19 through 21, evaluate enhanced security measures at city buildings and for governmental meetings, and shall provide the city council with recommendations for implementation of such measures. There is nothing wrong with him doing his job and giving you recommendations so that you can secure the building for yourselves, for me, and for other people that work here and want to visit here. And I encourage you to do the right thing. Pass this resolution. Thank you.
That's all the speakers on this particular item.
Okay, I think we'll have discussion. Ms. Wooten?
I agree with the resolution. It is in fact what it is. It is an assessment of our city buildings. I understand, the tragedy has left us vulnerable. This is not something that I'm saying will take care of every situation, take care of every threat that comes upon us. However, it's incumbent upon leadership to look at the areas that need to be enhanced, that need to be changed, and then make a decision on what needs to take place to make those areas more secure.
Okay, anybody else?
I just have one.
Yeah, John.
Because I know that access to public buildings is not a Second Amendment issue in and of itself. I don't believe, that's my personal opinion. But I do believe that this report should not be rendered with recommendations to the city council until 30 days after the official report has been rendered, to make sure that the report itself and his assessment incorporates or takes into consideration all the findings in that report. Because I think then we'd have something, but we wouldn't have what the report said. I offer that as a friendly amendment. I don't think it's adversarial to the resolution, but I just think it makes it better because we get full advantage of the findings of the report before the manager gives us his assessment of his recommendations.
Okay, would that be acceptable?
Yes.
We don't have a motion yet.
Okay, do we have a motion to that effect, Mr. Moss?
I'll just make a friendly amendment. She accepted.
I don't think she's actually made the motion yet.
Okay.
Oh, okay.
Anyway, when you make it, that would be great.
Okay.
So do you want me to make the motion?
Make a motion with
to
the friendly
move to
amendment.
approve this amendment with Mr. Moss's friendly amendment.
Yeah, okay.
Okay.
Okay,
May I ask a question? Just so I want to make sure I'm clear on the friendly amendment, it would direct an assessment at the conclusion.
No, I'm thinking he's going to be doing things in parallel, I would hope, but that he would not submit his assessment and evaluation until 30 days after the report had been issued, to give him time to incorporate what was in the report into the work that I would assume he would be, and I suspect already is, if I had it right, police chief already conducting. So it's not like wait till they're done and start. It's in parallel. Make sure you include it before you send it to us.
okay. Ms. Wooten, you made the motion?
Yes.
Okay, do we have a second?
Second.
Vote's open.
By a vote of 10 to 0, you have approved the resolution as amended.
Okay, item 4, resolution in memory of victims of May 31st, 2019 tragedy requested by Councilmember Wooten.
Oh, we only have
Speakers?
one speaker on this item, and that's Virginia Wasserberg.
Welcome back, Virginia.
Thank you. I have a couple repeat performances this evening. And thank you for passing the resolution with your amendment. I think your amendment to it was wise. Thank you. I wanted to say I'm in favor of this as well. Surprise, surprise, I'm here tonight in favor of just about everything that I'm going to speak on. But I'm in favor of this. It's a good thing. But today, I had the privilege of speaking with Sarah Leonard, who is the daughter of Mary Louise Gale. And I sent her all of these resolutions that concern this tragic event. And I said, Sarah, I said, Sarah, what do you want somebody like me to do? You know? And she looked at this resolution that's in memory of the victims. And she looked at line 8 where her mother's name is. And she requested that her mother's name be corrected to her legal name, Mary Louise Gale. And other than that, that's all I ask that you do, is that one of the victims' daughter has asked that her mother's name be corrected, Mary Louise, which is Louise, instead of Mary Lou. So other than that,
Okay,
that's all I ask.
thank you.
Thank you.
We have one other speaker, Barbara Messner.
I like that smile. Okay, I'm not going to scream and yell and support everything. I'm trying to be calm and collected, and I greatly appreciate what you said, Mr. Moss, Councilman Moss. To wait until the investigation is over, and I appreciate what Diana Howard said for the Nixon family. Brothers Pizza is, for people who want to donate, it goes directly to the family, and they also supported the law enforcement. They, sent pizzas during the grueling first few days. I can't even imagine. But, it can't be open-ended. And Mr. Hanson, making the decisions. I think we should be allowed to come back with whatever the new recommendations are and have input, because it affects all of us. You've placed people in 28 buildings. How are you going to protect them? Including Armada Hoffler Tower, which we've subsidized, since 2002. So, this person, everybody that works here, like the female garbage truck driver, she wasn't vetted. She ran, it was hit and run. She killed somebody on the beach. As far as I know, she's still working there. You have to be careful who's on your staff. You need to vet everyone on the staff before you start vetting us, and thank you.
Thank you.
That's all the speakers.
Okay, Ms. Wooten?
My motion that this resolution be approved with an amendment to correcting the name of one of the victims to Marie Louise Gale.
Mary.
Mary Louise Gale, I'm sorry.
Okay, do we have a second on that? Second. Okay, any discussion on that? Anybody? Okay, vote is open.
By a vote of 10 to 0, you've adopted the resolution with the amendment to Mary Louise Gale's name.
Okay, moving on to item number 5 under ordinances and resolutions. Resolution to support bill Ray allow localities to prohibit carrying of firearms in government buildings, requested by council members Tower and Wooten.
The first speaker is Vincent Smith, and the next speaker will be Chris Witowich, sorry. Vincent Smith. Thanks, Dave.
Mayor, Council, City Manager, good evening. My name is Vincent Smith. I'm a Public Works employee, but I speak here tonight as a citizen. My office was on the 3rd floor of Building 2. I was not in the building at the time. I want to talk to you about Herb Snelling. Herb was in the building on the day, conducting business as he usually did, finalizing details on a building permit. He was the only person who died that day who was not a city employee. Herb was a contractor. What interest could he ever have in our employees' right to defend themselves? Council's resolution implies that our citizens do not want government employees to be properly prepared to defend ourselves. Council's resolution, had it been law on May 30th, would not have affected the outcome of this tragedy, not by one single life. The only thing that stops an evil person with a gun is a good person with a gun. That's who stopped that man that day, a good person with a gun. We had many good people in that building who were disarmed and left unprotected by these misguided ideals and an overreaching HR policy. We as citizens of the United States and the Commonwealth of Virginia have the right to pursue our own safety. But employers across the state have banded together with these HR policies that require us to make a choice between taking the steps necessary to protect our lives and the need to earn a living. Most of this country has tried things the way Virginia Beach has. It has not worked. If we're to be a progressive and growing city, we have to think like others don't. We have to try something new. We have to relax the city's absolute no weapons for employees policy in some way. Have an open mind. What am I asking for? I want us to sit at a table together and find a mutually agreeable solution. I do not want to sit across the table from you on this topic, but I am worried. I'm worried we're going to find ourselves facing off in Richmond, far away from our city, getting nowhere, letting other people make these decisions for us. One last thought. After giving in to frustrations related to this 4 years ago, I tried an alternate approach. I started an online petition. The results of that petition were sent to council 3 years ago, to the best of my knowledge, directly from the website. I was naive enough to think that I could affect council's opinion through something as impotent as a petition. I mean, after all, if council's correct, the general public does not want city employees to protect themselves, right? In the coming days, I will reopen that petition for more signatures because it's the right thing to do to honor the 227th signature. On March 6, 2016, it was signed by Herb Snelling. Thank you.
Chris Widowich, and then Tracy Sanford.
Welcome, sir.
Thank you. I, too, work for Public Works Engineering, and I, too, was on the 3rd floor on May 31st during that tragic day. I'm here to oppose the city's resolution to approve or to support a bill to allow localities to prohibit the carrying of firearms in public buildings. This proposed bill doubles down on existing city policy that prevents city employees from carrying legally purchased and permitted firearms that we could have brought to protect ourselves. It is this policy that I and others would argue contributed to the number of victims of this tragedy. By some of your own admissions, this bill will not have prevented the shooting. So why expand on a policy that has already failed? It makes no sense to me. What this proposed bill does do is strip individuals of the right to protect themselves and others, and creates an environment where honest, law-abiding citizens can find themselves facing felony charges for simply forgetting to remove their legally permitted firearm before walking into a public building to pay their water bill. I would argue that passing such a bill makes us less safer, not more safe. I wish that some of my fellow employees or visiting citizens had been carrying that day. Maybe the shooter would have been stopped sooner, and maybe we didn't have to defend ourselves with staplers and fire extinguishers while rounds are being shot through doors and walls. No one has a right to take away our ability to defend ourselves. We have Building 2 employees that are former military and public safety that may have been able to better defend our positions had they been allowed to carry their personal firearms with them that day until the police arrived. We're talking about a critical point in time from when the shooting starts and the police arrive. We have no ability to defend ourselves unless we would have the ability, without loss of our jobs, to have that legally permitted firearm on us. And we're not talking about carrying a firearm on our hip. These are people who would just want to have this firearm because they felt unsafe for any reason. Voting to support this bill is a vote to weaken people's defense in such situations and will result in more victims. Vote no to this resolution and say yes to common sense defense. Thank you.
Thank you.
Tracy Sanford. Tracy Sanford. And after Ms. Sanford is Marion Kilkearney.
Welcome.
Hey, good evening, members of City Council and Administration. My name is Tracy Sanford, and I want to thank you for allowing me to share my support for item number I-5. The proposed resolution expresses City Council's support of a bill in the General Assembly to allow localities to regulate firearms in public buildings that are under the purview of local government. It is the same topic that was halted in committee in the recent Richmond session. Tonight, you considered much appreciated legislation to recognize those dead and injured in Building 2 on May 31st, and families who have sacrificed more than any public servant should be expected. You have also considered a resolution directing the manager to find ways to make our public buildings safer for employees and visitors alike. As part of that review, the manager should also have the ability to provide recommendations that maximize resources while protecting the occupants of our facilities. Approval of the proposed resolution to the General Assembly merely allows us to have an additional tool to protect our community. There will be time to debate the pros and cons should you and the General Assembly allow the First Amendment of the Constitution to talk about the Second Amendment in the future, should the measure pass. As is normally the case when the subject of guns arise, there will inevitably be heated opinions that go around. You've heard them. It's to be expected. Balancing freedoms and the fundamental rights of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness is never easy. But this resolution is not asking you to do this now. It is not asking you to ban firearms from public buildings. It simply asks the General Assembly for the same ability to determine the operation of our local public spaces that they demand from federal authorities for their facilities. Given that the General Assembly has halted any consideration of such reforms, it falls on localities to have the tough conversations about the values of our communities. Some here have publicly stated that council doesn't have the ability to do this, but you have not because you ask not. Your yes vote tonight would demonstrate your commitment to our resort city and go a long way in beginning the discussion of how we can best protect our public servants and citizen customers with every feasible tool. Your no vote simply sends a message to your employees that their safety isn't your priority. Pass the requisite thoughts and prayers. A vote to defer the resolution just confirms what some citizens already think about elected officials who believe they can't do everything, so they should do nothing. As a longtime resident and public servant myself, I am asking for your yes vote on this item, and thank you for your time.
Marion Kilkearney. And then the next speaker will be Kate Loring.
Welcome.
Good evening. My name is Marion Kilkearney. To the full council, thank you for the opportunity to speak this evening. To Councilwoman Wooten and Councilman Tower specifically, thank you for putting forth this resolution. To the police, first responders, and elected leaders here tonight, I extend my deepest gratitude and respect for all that you have done in recent weeks and days to help your people in the wake of this Virginia Beach's mass shooting. And to any municipal center employees and loved ones here tonight, I simply want to say how deeply sorry I am for everything that you're going through, and words cannot express. Very briefly, to provide some context around my comments tonight, A little bit about myself. I'm a third generation of my family to choose to live, work, play, be educated, and raise my own family here in our collective home, Virginia Beach. I'm a graduate of Cox High School, an employee of the Amerigroup Corporation, mom to 4 exceptional children, and a volunteer with Moms Demand Action for Gun Sense in America. Who is Moms Demand Action? We're a grassroots group of supporters with nearly 1,600 active volunteers in Virginia alone, many of whom you see here in red tonight. Moms consist of mothers, fathers, students, brothers, grandparents, friends, neighbors from all walks of life who simply do not accept that we have to live in fear of gun violence day in and day out, and who are standing up, doing the work, and taking action against it. What is the work? What is the action? We urge and work with our leaders to pass common sense gun legislation that will help keep us, our kids, and everyone in the community safer. We're working to spread awareness about the realities of gun violence in our community. We work to help survivors of gun violence to elevate their stories when they so desire, so that the true impact of this epidemic, the ripple effect of pain, of trauma, can become more aware. We are working to bring practical information about responsible gun ownership into your schools, churches, civic meetings, living rooms, and kitchen table discussions so that we may reduce preventable acts of violence, self-harm, and accidental shootings that happen every day in our city. We do this work so that our families will know a future that is free from constant anxiety about mass shootings and free from the shameful scourge of day-to-day gun violence. And so tonight we implore you to put the full support of the Virginia Beach City Council behind this resolution so that leadership and law enforcement in our city, in Virginia, all of Virginia's great cities, may be empowered to make decisions at the local level, so you may decide to help keep us safer from gun violence in the manner that is pertinent to you and to us and to that police force is behind. Remember Virginia Tech. Remember Virginia Beach. Remember how that ripple effect I spoke of has affected you or someone you know.
Very much.
And take the first step toward making a change. Thank you.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Kate Mooring. And after Miss Loring is Wes Prince.
Welcome.
Is this working? Yes, okay. My name is Kate, and 12 years ago, my college student daughter, Claire, was leaving a restaurant when she was shot and killed by her ex-boyfriend, who then killed himself. Afterward, there were comments online that if she'd had a gun, she could have survived. In other words, it was sort of her own fault that she died. Actually, Claire had studied self-defense for 3 years, but when her ex ambushed her with a gun in her side, she was trapped. The friend with her is an experienced shooter and lamented that she hadn't brought her gun that night, but in fact, a policeman at the scene told me the friend was so shocked that if she'd had a gun, there might have been more accidental deaths. I share this story because some people argue that we should allow average citizens to carry guns in city buildings so they can protect themselves and supposedly save others. I understand their fears, but I am frightened by their naive self-confidence. This is a fantasy of heroism. The shooter always has the advantage of surprise, planning, a twisted motive, and perhaps a wish to die. Given those factors and the capacity of the Virginia Beach shooter's weapons, on May 31st, it took 4 trained police officers an extended gun battle to bring him down. So must we all now train extensively to shoot with the precision of police? In our daily lives, must we be prepared with our weapon at the ready to be heroic and immune to trauma in the face of a sudden military-style assault? Must we learn to intuit the tactics of law enforcement in a chaotic scene, stay out of their way, and somehow let them know we're the good guy with the gun? And if we don't do this, is it sort of our own fault if we're slaughtered? Maybe a few battle-tested people in this city could do that. I can't, and I don't want to live that way. There is another way that doesn't involve having increasingly more guns on the scene, but fewer. For public safety, I don't mind going through a bag check or a scanner. Entering a confined space like a city building, I'm happy to know systems are set up to protect me. A law prohibiting weapons is a good start, and a tighter security system at entry points could enforce that law. I live with the memory always of 2 police at the door asking me if I have a daughter named Claire. and I live with the continual presence of her absence in my life. Believe me, I've learned that we are all vulnerable, there are bad people, and bad stuff happens. No single gun regulation will prevent every gun death. The red flag law proposed to the Assembly might have helped my Claire, but not our 12 victims. And prohibiting guns in public buildings wouldn't have helped Claire, but will protect other people. My goal is to save lives going forward, and a carefully crafted set of regulations can do that. I volunteer for political candidates I respect on this issue because
Thank you very much.
you are the ones who can make a real difference, and I ask you to vote yes.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Wes Prince. Wes Prince. And the next speaker after Mr. Prince is Luis Cortez.
Good evening. Thank you for having me here.
Welcome.
Apologize for my dress. I had to rush for work. We're here, and we obviously all know why we're here. We've heard a lot of emotion in everybody's testimony. I'd like to go with some facts. We're talking about policy, Virginia Beach Policy 6-18, that effectively disarms each employee that works for the city as long as they're in these buildings. I'd like to share with you the FBI reports that have been published from 2000 to 2017. 3 separate reports, but all doing the same thing. The FBI active shooter reports. Let's see here. There were 283 total active shooter events in these 3 reports. An armed citizen was present and engaged the shooter in 33 of these total incidents. This is inclusive regardless of who the armed citizen was or their direct potential for stopping the shooter. Of all the active shooter events, there were 33 of which an armed citizen was present. Of those 33, armed citizens were successful at stopping the active shooter 75% of the time. That doesn't mean killing him, that just means stopping him. Maybe he took and ran the other way. They were also successful in reducing the loss of life an additional 18% of the incidents. In only 2 of the 33 incidents was the armed citizen not helpful in any way. You can do the math on that. That's 94% of the time. If there's an armed citizen, whether it be employee or myself, available, 94% of the time they're effective in either stopping or mitigating the shooting. The policy that's currently in place, you have a 0% chance because everyone is cowering in their desk, hiding behind a door, hoping it's not them. As we've seen, I believe this is a failed policy. I see no reason to expand on a failed policy. I think we can come up with other solutions, but I do not believe that disarming law-abiding citizens going on about their daily lives is the way to do this. Thank you.
Thank you.
Luis Cortez. Luis Cortez. Donald Bell. And after Mr. Bell is Holly Edwards.
Welcome, sir.
Good evening, council members. Thank you for allowing me to speak tonight. I just came across this resolution yesterday when I was reading the paper, and I've been actively involved about what the tragedy that happened here in Building 2. I'm a general contractor, and I spend time in Building 2 quite often. And not only that, Bert Snelling lived about 8 doors down from me, too. So, I think this resolution completely makes sense. When I read it, my first reaction was, duh. I mean, and I even wrote it on my index card because I thought it was pretty self-explanatory, you know. I have a lot of opinions about guns and everything, and I'll keep most of them to myself. I do have a carry and conceal permit. I never carry my weapon in a city building, ever. I don't see the reason for it. I know there's police around there standing right back there. I think people take it way too far, you know. I don't agree with the policy either that Virginia Beach city employees are not allowed to carry. That's like that gentleman said, you know, you're disarming people. And now that really doesn't make any sense to me because you've disarmed your employees, but you're allowing Joe Public to come in with weapons. That makes absolutely no sense to me whatsoever. So I don't really agree with that policy, but I do agree with Resolution 5. I think that's pretty self-explanatory. I don't see any reason for anybody to carry weapons in city buildings other than, you know, police officers or something like that. There are certain organizations that work for the city that have a tendency to upset citizens. Why would you allow them to carry weapons in those buildings? I'm very upset right now with the Preservation City of Virginia Beach Preservation Neighborhood Watch thing. Okay, of course, but the point is I don't see why anybody would do that. And the final thing that I want to say is I know the whole gun thing and everything is a big issue. Some guy gave me this sticker when I just walked in here, "Guns Save Lives." I'm a combat infantry vet from Desert Storm. I was on the front line with 3rd Armored Division when we crossed the berm into Iraq. Don't tell me guns save lives, because they don't. And guns don't take lives either. People do, okay? And as far as your second issue that you said in your with the pilot here, this is a mental health crisis, is what it is. And it's worldwide. And it's not about guns.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate it.
Holly Edwards. And after Miss Edwards is Philip Van Cleve.
Welcome.
Hello, thank you. I'm here today to speak in support of Councilwoman Wooten's resolution. I'm here because I live in Virginia Beach, but I'm a city employee in another locality. I know that for every city employee who has chosen to stand up and speak today, there are more who are fearful of speaking on issues before council. I'm asking you to take the opportunity today to show the employees of City of Virginia Beach, as well as across the Commonwealth, that you want to do everything in your power to keep them safe while at work. It's important to remember that passing this resolution does not bind the City of Virginia Beach to making our municipal centers gun-free zones. It simply tells the state legislature that you believe each locality in the Commonwealth should be able to decide for themselves how to keep their employees safe. Why wouldn't they be afforded that opportunity? I have watched this council influence state and federal officials before on legislations and positions that are important to the City of Virginia Beach, such as offshore drilling and the ERA. I have watched how those elected officials have changed their positions based on your support and your opposition. I am asking you to do this again today. Please continue your leadership in the Commonwealth by voting in support of Councilwoman Wooten's resolution. And as I was sitting at my seat today, a City of Virginia Beach employee sent me a statement that I would like to read as well. I may not get through it all before my time is up, but I'll get through what I can. What she said was, "I wasn't certain that it was appropriate for a city employee to speak at tonight's council meeting, but I wish to share my support for your resolutions to assess the current security measures and prohibit firearms in municipal buildings. I have worked for the City of Virginia Beach for 16 years and have had the fortunate circumstance to move from Building 19 at the Municipal Center to the new Parks and Recreation Administration Building. It's a beautiful open building to encourage collaboration. My first concern upon moving into that building, that my workspace is on the second floor above the main common area, right within the first line of sight of an active shooter. It's horrible to have to think that way. And of course, with the recent tragedy at Building 2, all I could think about is how open and full of glass my building is, and how there's nowhere to escape. I don't know how I feel about having an armed security at all buildings, but I feel like it's furthering the idea of everywhere feeling like a jail. And I feel like I tense up at the sight of an armed guard. As a person of color, this has a real effect on the negative experiences in the past. I don't want to feel like I'm on the defense every time going to work, when what I do for
for a living is to serve the citizens of Virginia Beach through leisure and recreational opportunities. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Philip Van Cleve. And then the next speaker is Conrad Sisventer.
Welcome, sir.
Thank you very much. Philip Van Cleve, President of the Virginia Citizens Defense League. In looking at the resolution, an analogy that comes to me, it's like saying that somebody that died of an overdose of opioids died because they didn't have enough opioids in their system. We know that gun-free zones don't work. They're dangerous. 98% of the public mass shootings happen in gun-free zones, and they have since 1950. Because criminals pick an area where they're going to dominate. They're the one guy that has the power, and nobody else can do anything but throw things at them to try to stop them. So it's a bad idea. The state does allow you, as the head of the city, to be able to allow employees to be able to carry. And indeed, Bedford County implemented just exactly that policy a few years ago. And they have employees that have concealed carry permits can carry concealed. And that means a bad guy wanting to attack a Bedford County building is like a jack-in-the-box. He doesn't know who to attack first. Who has the concealed gun that's going to stop him? In fact, that in itself is a deterrent to even starting shooting like that, because you don't even know who to kill first. And at the end of the day, it doesn't matter how they got a gun in or why they're killing people, how they got it through security or didn't get it through security. None of that matters. What matters at the end of the day is being able to save your life. You've got one life. That's it. If somebody takes it away from you, it's over. Your family's lost you and everything. That's what matters. And letting people protect themselves, that should always be one of your main priorities. As a person, at the end of the day, no matter what failed, be it security, be it whatever, they should be able to protect themselves. It just doesn't make sense to not give people that very basic human right to protect their lives, because it doesn't matter what the failure is. Anyway, I thank you very much, and I hope you would oppose the resolution. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Conrad Sisventer.
Welcome, Conrad.
And then the next speaker will be Karen Halfcost.
I don't have to tell you things are bad. Everybody knows things are bad. It was a mass shooting. A week ago, I addressed Chesapeake City Council about the Holly Cove mass shooting. 'Twas days after listening to Candace Blue discuss her foundation named after her son, Namel, gunned down on a Norfolk sidewalk. Employees go to work scared coworkers might use guns in the workplace. MacArthur and Military Circle malls have shootings. Gas stations in Portsmouth and Norfolk had deadly shootings. A Hampton Yacht Club was shot up the other day. A young man shot both his parents in their home in Chesapeake. Road rage led a man to shoot at another car on I-64. Oceana has been moved by a shooting, and the oceanfront has shootings seemingly monthly. There's nobody anywhere who seems to know what to do, and there's no end to it. We know the schools are unsatisfactorily safe, and city buildings are unsatisfactorily safe, and we watch timeline feeds and Twitter updates as the news lets us know that a woman like India Cager is shot up in a car next to her 4-month-old by SWAT anticipating a hitman, as if that's the way this is all supposed to be. Things are bad, they're worse than bad, they're crazy. We read all these stories and all we say is, please, focus on mental health and allowing all persons to carry, just leave us alone. Well, you shouldn't leave it alone. I want you all to gather with state and federal representatives and get mad. I don't know the exact formula to kill gun usage. All I know is, first, you've got to get mad. You've got to go to Richmond and D.C. and yell that we're all human beings, damn it. Our lives have value. If you all join with the people and they're not taking any more of this BS, then we might make meaningful change. Thank you.
Thank you.
Karen Halfcost. And then the next speaker will be Joseph Elliott.
Welcome.
Mr. Mayor, members of City Council, thank you for taking the time tonight to listen to members of our community. My name is Karen Halfcost. My purpose in speaking is to ask you to pass a resolution stating your support for legislation by the state to give localities the option to disallow firearms from city property or at city operating locations. Until 2 weeks ago, I worked on the second floor of Building 2 here on campus. While the world continues to swirl around us, for many people, life will never be the same. It's hard to say the words about the effects on staff and families without sounding melodramatic. Loss, anxiety, exhaustion, fear, and suspicion. Trying to figure out a new normal, a realization that this is only the beginning for us, and it will soon be a forgotten headline. Supporting this resolution and the change in legislation would not have prevented this shooting. But what it can be is a statement, and it makes clear to the residents and the employees of the City of Virginia Beach that you refuse to normalize something that is not normal. Today, it's against the law to carry a lit cigarette into my office, but legal to carry a firearm into the place that I spend most of my hours on most days. Why are firearms necessary in the offices where municipal employees are working and municipal business is being done? If the members really are your priority, make it clear by passing this resolution. Support legislation, give localities options. Mr. E. Ray Cox Sr., the father of shooting victim Ryan Keith Cox, was quoted as saying, "Every time there's a mass shooting, we sit down and we work our lips, but we don't work our laws." It's not too soon to talk about increasing security of our community. You can do that by supporting this resolution, making this statement, and taking steps to identify security gaps. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Joseph Elliott. And after Mr. Elliott's Terry Centori.
Welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Good evening. My name is Joseph Elliott. I'm a U.S. Navy veteran of 24 years and a concealed weapon permit holder. I've been around firearms all my adult life, and I have a degree in firearms science. I, like many permit holders, take welfare of my family and the people around me very seriously, and that is why I carry my weapon, and I'm carrying it now. On May 31st, 2019, the city experienced something no city should have to endure. Even though the police were only yards away, the criminal was still able to murder 12 people before they could intervene. This man was not a law-abiding citizen and should not have been carrying a weapon in that zone. This proposal of a resolution to allow localities to ban guns in a local government building is an absolute knee-jerk reaction. How will this resolution make us citizens safer when criminals do not follow the law? This has been proven time and time again when sick people shoot up only gun-free zones. Who will guarantee my family's well-being when I am not allowed to protect them? Even with security, there is no guarantee of safety. This tragedy should not have been a springboard for more gun control. If anything, it should have paved the way for more people to carry without restriction. It is a proven fact that a good guy with a gun can stop bad people from doing terrible things, and this good guy does not have to be a police officer. If we must wait for a professional to react or arrive, then why do we keep fire extinguishers? Is not having a firearm as prudent as having a way to put out the fire before the fire department gets there? Every time an event such as this happens, people ask, how can we make more laws to stop this? The laws are there. We just got to fall back on them and make them better. In closing, I do not support this or any resolution for more gun control. The only thing that the city council could possibly do is take away the rights of those who follow the law, not the criminal. You should ask yourself, if it would have been a gun-free zone, would it have helped the victims in Building 2? Thank you.
Thank you.
Terry Centori. And after Mr. Centori is Michael Durig.
Welcome.
I'm Terry Santori, 5900 Buckminster Lane, 23462. I am against this because when localities start making rules, they make different rules. I'm sure there are contractors that 1 week they're working in Virginia Beach and the next week they're working in Newport News. And if there's 75 different laws, you're going to break one of them sooner or later. They all should be uniform. This is just not something that I believe a locality ought to get into. As far as a security thing, It's like this. Security is expensive, and security slows things down. People going through detectors and such like that, that just adds cost to business. It adds cost to the city to pay for all these things. And if somebody doesn't care about their own life, they will just walk right through that security. The armed people at the entrance will be the first to be hurt, and it won't help anything. And lastly, if you just think, well, this isn't my job to protect myself, it just gets to the point where if you don't take just at least basic steps to be able to protect yourself in your own environment, I'm not talking about 1,000-yard shots off of a helicopter or anything like that. I'm just saying basic steps to take care of yourself in the environment that you live and work in. You won't take steps to help anyone else. And you have to ask yourself, why should anybody else put themselves in danger to protect you when you wouldn't do that for them? And I mean, granted, some people will have more or less aptitude for different things. And, I wear glasses. And my eyesight's getting worse. Past 400 yards, I just don't shoot at it because I just can't anymore. But lastly, I just say safety is important, but freedom is more important. Freedom first, safety second. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, sir.
Michael Durig. Then after Mr. Durig is Neil Jeffries.
Welcome, sir.
Good evening, Mayor, Council people. My name's Michael Durig. I live at 3637 Crofts Pride Drive. Good evening. I'm here to address you this evening over the topic of gun control, and gun violence in our city. After the sad events of Memorial Day weekend, I feel uniquely qualified to speak on the topic of no gun zones and the inability to defend myself in such attacks. I am a retired public school teacher from Virginia Beach. I've spent the last 11 years in the classroom. I was an active TSA screener from 2002 to 2004, where I stood watch at Norfolk International Airport just after 9/11. I participated in Class 31 of Chesapeake Police Academy for the Citizens in 2012. As a range officer in a local shooting range from 2013 to 2016 when I needed additional income. My teaching background required that I get more training, so I attended Gun Ranch Pistol Course 250 and became an NRA certified pistol instructor in 2017. Finally, during my military service as a musician, I served in Europe, Africa, South America, and here in the continental United States, performing ceremonies for the fallen. These experiences provide an insight to some of the questions you're addressing tonight. My first military service took me to the cemeteries where our warriors are interred throughout Europe and continents. As a high school teacher, I realized that the young faces in front of me were not much different than those under the stones I honored during my military service. I realized the loss of human potential. I used my TSA and my Citizens Academy training with the knowledge and experience with firearms to assess my classroom as a high school teacher, make adjustments to harden my position, and bring procedures to our school drills within my classroom to mitigate armed threats. Neither the police nor the administration could secure my space at school. I had to do it. I also developed strategies and tactics in which I could defend myself and my students should my preparations fail. Because of my age, I chose to train to improve my chances of surviving this sort of incident. The resource officer at our school and I would discuss tactics and strategies, and I offered my assistance in the event of a crisis. One of the RSOs was so confident in me that when asked by my assistant principal after a threat what should be done if he fell in the line of duty, his response was, Give my cruiser fob to Mr. Durig. He knows what to do. Why shouldn't I be armed? The reason is easy.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
Neil Jeffries. And then the next speaker is Karen Greenhall.
Welcome, sir.
Thank you. Good evening, Mr. Mayor, Mr. Vice Mayor, members of the council, esteemed citizens of Virginia Beach who have joined me here to see you this evening. I've lived in Virginia Beach for over 35 years, raised a family here through the Virginia Beach Public Schools, and I'm proud to have a wife who is an employee of the city of Virginia Beach, whose workplace I visit on a regular basis, Caring. Her boss knows, most of her coworkers know, I'm no threat to them. In fact, annually, in the buildings of Virginia Beach City, there are thousands, tens of thousands of firearms brought in by good citizens. No problem. Other weapons come in too, pocket knives and so forth, etc., but everyone wants to focus on the gun. So let's talk about it a little bit. Retired Navy, support and defend the Constitution. Some of you also took that same oath when you joined and served this country, and I thank you for your service. Virginia Constitution, Article 1, Section 13. You're not supposed to take away our gun rights. By the way, government does not give us that right to self-defense. That's a right that we had before government existed. Same thing in the U.S. Constitution, Second Amendment. It existed before the government. The government did not give it. It acknowledged that right. The day the first shooting happened at Fort Hood, I was sitting at a contractor job that I had on base Little Creek. Sitting there with an expert pistol from the Navy, NRA certified instructor, NRA range officer, working as a range officer part-time. I looked around my workspace and I found that I was armed with a pair of scissors, a stapler, and a 3-hole punch. Thankfully, my current job does not have that restriction. I no longer work on the base. I work out in town with a company that supports my right to self-defense. If you eliminate the preemption laws that say localities cannot put more strict laws than the state puts on, which is what this resolution is asking for, then you create chaos. As one previous speaker mentioned, you go from city A to city B and the law is different. That creates the opportunity for honest citizens to inadvertently become criminals. That's not what we're supposed to be about in this nation. Eliminating gun-free zones, on the other hand, does provide those who choose to carry the opportunity to protect themselves. Now, understand the analogy that this world exists with sheep, wolves, and sheepdogs. I prefer to be the sheepdog and be able to protect. So what I'll leave you with is this. We heard at the beginning of the evening good and sound leadership on this council. I'm asking good and sound leadership to say no to this resolution. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Karen Greenhall. And then the next speaker will be Barbara Messner.
Good evening.
Hello, my name is Karen Greenhall. I live at 4545 Commerce Street. I know, I like your sign. There's a sign up here that says relax and be respectful. That's just, it makes you smile when you come up. I live in the West End, out at Town Center. I appreciate the concern I've heard tonight for safety in Virginia Beach and the rest of Virginia. But I am against the resolution allowing localities to make gun-free zones. There have only been 2 major studies on the effectiveness of gun-free zones. One was the Crime Prevention Research Center, who says 98% of mass shootings occur in gun-free zones. The other is Every Town for Gun Safety, which says 10% occur in gun-free zones. While the difference is a lot of the difference is based on the research criteria. It's also true both of these organizations are very partisan. The reasonable assumption is it's somewhere in between, and it still has to be addressed. So regardless of the limitation of available research, it's evident that gun-free zones are disproportionately targeted in comparison to unrestricted areas. It's not a coincidence that schools, universities, religious organizations, and government facilities are targeted. The simple explanation is the psychology of a mass shooter. While motives vary, their intention is to assert dominance by wielding the ultimate power of life and death over their victims. Gun-free zones are effectively gift-wrapping victims for severely unstable homicidal individuals. Experts agree that these aren't common criminals. They're not after your purse and your wallet. They want body counts and blood in headlines. Right now, all across America, school children are being taught, run, hide, fight. So in the STEM school, which was a gun-free school, one boy was killed when he rushed the shooter to save other students. 3 other boys rushed after the first one was killed. One of them was shot in the chest to subdue the shooter until somebody came to help those children. I'm sorry, I didn't even have to write it down. I don't understand why we're teaching children to fight in America instead of protecting them. Gun-free zones do not offer protection. I do appreciate that y'all are already looking at security options for Virginia Beach. I very much appreciate that. But in my view, the solution's simple. Whether you like it or not, there have to be armed individuals inside. And this removes the ability of the homicidal individual with a criminal intent to fulfill their desire, which is to have power over their victims. The presence of adequately armed and prepared security would be the most effective solution for reducing the risk.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Am I finished?
Yeah. Thank you very much.
Barbara Messner. And after Ms. Messner is Delegate Kelly Fowler.
I think I want to appreciate everyone who spoke, because a lot of people really, they believe in their reasons for wanting more laws. Half the laws we have here aren't enforced. And then even when somebody kills somebody, a judge lets them off with a slap on the wrist. Sandy Hook, those kids weren't protected. South Carolina Church, it was a sick person that was sat right there with them at their church services. Yeah, and before Ms. Fowler, who's part of Ms. Loria and all the extreme liberals who want gun control, I'm sorry, but I came here because a lot of these victim families are not ready to come forward, and the one who's the most outspoken is Mr. Nixon. Can you imagine your wife is killed and you have to tell your 3 children, including a baby, and then there's no coverage by outside media? When have you seen outside media coverage of this? He's pleading for an independent investigation, and there isn't even any outside media. Okay, these are the 12 victims. We need to honor and remember forever in our hearts prayers for peace, justice, and healing. I've seen a lot of the Centera people at the memorial. There's so many people that are impacted. It's not just our first responders. But y'all are spending a lot of money that you're taking in. We have no idea where it's going. Some of it's going to rent in 28 buildings other than your own. So your priorities really bother me, and I support canceling this resolution until we know exactly what it is, not just a blank, whatever Mr. Hansen comes up with, because he works for all of you. Thank you.
Delegate Kelly Fowler. And the next speaker will be Todd Grissom. How'd that fall on?
Good evening. I've been called to a special session on July 9th. I have to go to Richmond, along with my fellow delegates and senators, and see if there's something we can do to keep people safe. to ensure what happened in Virginia Beach on May 31st never happens again. Last week, I sent some drafted language to this body and asked for your thoughts. I was glad to get enthusiastic feedback from council members Wooten and Tower, and I'm pleased they moved ahead with the efforts. But let me be clear. I'm doing my job. I am working on how to best serve Virginia Beach. I have not filed a bill or officially sponsored a bill. I simply initiated conversation to better do my job in a few weeks when I go to Richmond. Is it too soon to talk about legislation that keeps people safe? No. Yesterday, there was a shooter who attempted to enter a courthouse in Dallas. There were precautions in place to prevent him from going into that building and killing 12 of those people. Security measures in place to keep people safe. Law enforcement to ensure those people were safe. This courthouse was a public building where any one of us could be required to go. Should Virginia Beach put these security measures in place in their public buildings? Maybe. But right now, the General Assembly doesn't give you the authority to decide that. It doesn't give this body a choice. You aren't allowed to have these security measures, so why discuss them? I watched the informal session today while this body discussed the new City Hall and potential security measures incorporated into the design. I heard someone mention metal detectors, but right now you can't consider metal detectors. The Commonwealth of Virginia doesn't let you consider these. Tonight you aren't deciding if you should ban firearms in municipal buildings. You are deciding whether or not you should have a choice. You all are deciding whether or not you should have a choice, and supporting this resolution means that you want Virginia Beach to decide for itself and not the state. Why would we not want to decide for ourselves? I have heard some councils say that they won't support the legislation put forth by one legislator because they are concerned that it would be partisan. People's safety isn't partisan. This is a nonpartisan body. If you want the option and the authority to decide for yourselves, then you shouldn't care who supports these efforts. Delegate Marcia Price had a version of this bill last session. We could support her bill. Regardless, this resolution supports a bill that gives local government choice, so it can be sponsored by any legislator. Right now, the General Assembly denies local government any authority. On July 9th, I'm going to work to give you all the authority to decide what is best for Virginia Beach. So thank you.
Todd Grissom. Todd Grissom, and after Mr. Grissom is David Jarman.
Welcome, sir.
Thanks, sir. Mr. Mayor, Council, my name is Todd Grissom, 1101 Amy Drive, if that matters. I'm fortunate to have spent the majority of my life in Virginia Beach. I'm a graduate of Kempsville High School. I'm a city employee. I'm a survivor of the May 31st event in Building 2. My ex-wife and the mother of my 4 children is a survivor and a victim of that event. The safety and security of all city employees is your responsibility. Existing policies already require that employees give up their right of armed self-defense as a condition of employment with the City of Virginia Beach. That is a decision we all weigh, or many of us weigh, when coming to work for the city. On May 31st, every employee in Building 2 followed policy except one. And as a result, 12 are dead, 4 are physically injured forever. The rest of us will bear this in our minds for the rest of our lives. In response to this event, several council members asked that you support a bill that would allow localities to further restrict the rights of citizens, not city employees, but citizens, the rights to defend themselves. These are my business associates. These are people we work with on a daily basis. Whether they meet the requirements of self-carry, they've gone to the police station, they've filled out the paperwork, they've gotten the background checks, they should have the right to do as they see fit coming to our place of business. Their caring does not make me feel at a disadvantage. This action, by supporting this bill, would not have made the victims of May 31st any safer or changed the outcome of that day. The staff were already unprotected. We all did what we needed to do at that time. The proposal here is an agenda-driven, guns are bad legislation being proposed in the wake of senseless tragedy. It is knee-jerk, it is standard, it happens after all of these events. In your search to respond to this tragedy, I urge you to do something meaningful. Reject this appeal to create more defenseless victims. Answers and solutions don't magically appear in a convenient 2-week period following a tragedy like this. I encourage you to endeavor to find real solutions to make the employees and citizens in the municipal buildings and all public places within the boundaries of the great city of Virginia Beach safer and more effective. Thank you for your time and effort.
Thank you, sir.
David Jarman. And after Mr. Jarman is Tim Worst.
Welcome, sir.
Thank you. Mayor Dyer, members of the City Council, City Manager Hanson. My name is David Jarman. I live in Chesapeake, but I've worked for Public Works Engineering for almost 15 years. I've spent my entire career working on the 3rd floor of Building 2. I'm standing before you tonight to ask you to oppose the resolution to restrict guns on government property. It's an admirable resolution, but sadly it does not make anyone safer. If the goal is to make us feel better, then this may be the resolution for you. If your goal is to do something, then I would recommend you hold out for a better option. Should our employees be allowed to lawfully carry concealed weapons to defend themselves inside city buildings? Some would say no because of fear. I would like to suggest that we set our preconceived notions aside and have an honest conversation before we start ruling out options. We've been told that the police were on the scene within 2 minutes after the first 911 call on May 31st, which is utterly amazing. There's no doubt that their actions saved lives that day, but even with the quick response, we still lost 12 wonderful people. Can you imagine if that response time was 6 minutes or 8 minutes? What if the exterior doors were locked? Think about the minutes and seconds that would tick by while the police raced to the site doing everything they can to gain access to the building. During those critical moments, what options do our employees have? Run, hide, fight. That's what we're told to do. So our coworkers ran, our coworkers hid, but they couldn't fight. I left the building about 15 minutes before all this broke out on May 31st. And so in the chaos of all that, I waited with other employees on George Mason Drive, hoping to see familiar faces come out of Building 2. And we did. We did see many, and we didn't see others. As staff were being released by the police, a coworker was walking down the sidewalk with a look of shock on his face. I hugged him and said, "I'm so glad you're safe." He looked at me and said, "I've never felt so hopeless in all my life." He repeated it, then he reached in his pocket and pulled out a stapler. We've said that tonight. And he said, "This is all I had. This is all I had to defend myself." As engineers, you call on us to solve problems, and we make every effort to deliver on that commitment with integrity, accuracy, and professionalism. As we analyze solutions, it's important to lay out all of the options and understand the pros and cons behind each. This allows our leadership to make informed decisions. The resolution before you tonight is ultimately intended to take a major option off the table for consideration, the ability of employees to lawfully defend themselves with a firearm. It's irresponsible to do this before the conversation has even started. We can't regulate evil, nor can we know the hour when someone's evil thoughts will turn into evil actions, but we can be ready to defend against it. And although we'll never know the answer to why this happened, we have a responsibility to make sure that our staff have a fighting chance should this ever happen again. We need to be the voice for the 12 victims that didn't have a chance on that dark day. I ask you to oppose this resolution. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Tim Worst. And after Mr. Worst is Robert McCall.
Welcome.
Thank you, sir. Good evening. Thank you for allowing us to speak tonight. It's nice to see a full room, whether you're in favor or against what is being proposed. And I agree with some things that have been said tonight, and I disagree with others. But just to be certain, I went back and read the resolution, and this is to prohibit the carrying of firearms in our government buildings, which I oppose. May 31st was the worst day ever in Virginia Beach, being born and raised here. And I ask that you please listen to some of these city employees that are here tonight. You sit back there and you listen to those who are not in favor of guns being in the building that were right there that day in the building, whether they're on the first floor, second floor, or third floor. That's what I'm listening to. Our own chief of police said that no law would have stopped this. So why are we asking lots of questions to others? Our own chief of police said that. I think taking away the rights of people to arm themselves is not the answer. What's the underlying reason, like Dee said, why this happened? So I talked to several employees, city employees. What about bullying that goes on at work? What about stress that goes on? What about making decisions that they want to make but they're not allowed to? And those are the right decisions to make from my opinion. But they're bullied into making decisions they don't want to make because that's what the higher ups are telling them to do. So I have my own recommendations. Stop the bullying that may or may not have caused this. Stop harassment. Address why people are leaving a job with the city in big numbers. HR was the #1 reason I heard when I campaigned for about a year for city council. HR was the #1 reason, or #1 complaint that I heard about working with the city. I love the idea, and some of you have talked about allowing an outside investigation. We talk about transparency a lot, and I am thankful for that, Bobby Dyer. I am very thankful for transparency. I hope we get it here. But I don't think the answer is to take away our Second Amendment rights and to get rid of these guns. I believe that these two gentlemen in the front row could have taken care of themselves better had they been in the possession of a firearm. Thank you.
Russell McCall. Russell McCall. And the next speaker will be Diana Howard.
Welcome, sir.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, City Councilman, City Councilwomen. Thank you for having me here tonight. My name is Robert McCall, and I'm a combat vet of Afghanistan. I served as an infantryman with the 82nd Airborne Division. I am here to oppose Councilwoman Wooten's and Councilman Towers' support for the bill banning all firearms from municipal buildings. Further widening of gun-free zones only creates more soft targets that are susceptible for an attack. A location where people cannot defend themselves only opens themselves to have violence thrust upon them. It is illegal to carry a firearm in a federal building already, and in most state buildings, barring rest stops and state parks. And it's already illegal for a city employee to carry a firearm to work. Again, barring law enforcement who heroically responded to the shootings on the 31st of May. Maybe, just maybe, a law-abiding firearm owner and carrier could have stopped the atrocity that happened. I can only speculate that it would have. Unfortunately, humans are inherently violent by nature, and this can be traced back hundreds and thousands of years ago. If you're a religious person, the first act of violence was when Cain killed Abel in Genesis. There were no guns back then, yet violence existed. Genghis Khan slaughtered roughly 1/3 of the world's populations without guns. Violent crimes are increasing in England, but they don't have any personal firearms. That was outlawed. Japan as well. May 28th of this year, a man killed 2 schoolgirls and wounded 17 others in a knife attack. Lastly, I would like to address Councilwoman Wooten's remarks in the Virginian pilot. She said, and I quote, "We cannot control the people who use guns. We cannot control their irrational behavior. We can't control how they act out mentally and if they are mentally unstable." That sounds to me like the Councilwoman has a preconceived notion that all gun owners are mentally unstable and a threat to society. If you support the Second Amendment like you say you do, Councilwoman, you should realize it wasn't written to limit the people. It was written, the Constitution was written to limit the government. Thank you.
Diana Howard. And after Ms. Howard is Virginia Wasserberg.
Welcome back.
Good evening again. Virginia is where the foundations of this country took root. The home of George Washington, General for the Continental Army, first President of these United States. Thomas Jefferson penned the Declaration of Independence. James Madison, author of the Constitution. And George Mason, who wrote the Virginia Declaration of Rights, which later became the basis of the Bill of Rights for our nation, with the first 10 amendments to the Constitution, the second being the right to bear arms. There are millions of law-abiding citizens that carry firearms every day without incident. Every day. You were elected to uphold the Constitution and not take away our rights.
Virginia Wasserberg. And then the next speaker is Leslie Wright.
Welcome back, Virginia.
Good evening. Thank you. I promise it's my last time. First, I want to start off saying that my former councilwoman, Shannon Kane, for the Rose Hall District, I spoke with her on the phone one time, and she told me that when she has development projects that come in front of her, she likes to take the name off the development project and look at just the project and not look at who is developing it, so she can weigh out the context of the project and find out if it's good for our city. And I want to encourage you to do the same thing here tonight. This resolution here says that, there's a bill, and we know maybe who has the bill, but maybe someone else in the General Assembly might have the bill too. So I want to encourage you to look at the context and not the developer, just like Ms. Kane used to do when she sat on this council. And so in the context of the resolution, let's look at that tonight, because that's what you're going to vote on tonight. You're not voting on taking away the Second Amendment, not voting on our rights. You're voting on this resolution. Line 6.
Will you show respect, please? Thank you.
Line 6 says that Northam called for a special session to the General Assembly. Line 8 says that the state law currently prohibits localities in Virginia from restricting the carrying of firearms. That's line 9. Lines 12 through 14 talk about adopting an ordinance that prohibits firearms, ammunition, or components or combination thereof in any building owned or used by such locality for governmental purposes. Lines 16 and 17 say that this bill could enable the city to better protect the employees who work in and the citizens who visit city buildings. That's me. I don't work here, but I visit here. Lines 21 through 23 are the actual resolution, and I'm going to read it just so that everybody hears it. It says, I'll start at 19. Therefore, be it resolved by the Council of the City of Virginia Beach, Virginia, that the City Council supports legislation that would enable localities to prohibit firearms in government buildings, and hereby urges the General Assembly and Governor to promptly approve such legislation in the interest of employee and public safety. This is about public safety. This resolution is good. I'm in favor of it, and to defer it, and to have, debate about it. Debate about this? A resolution? Let's debate public safety? Are you kidding me? Please don't debate public safety. You were elected to act on it. Please act. Thank you.
Leslie Wright. Leslie Wright. And after Ms. Wright is Gary Moeller.
Welcome.
It's a resolution to support a bill to allow localities to prohibit the carrying of firearms in governmental buildings, requested by council members Tower and Wooten. If you weren't expecting to do it, you wouldn't be requesting to have the ability to do it. Questions that come to mind every time gun control topics arise. Does my life have value? Is it worth saving? Do I have permission to save my own life during a tragedy? There were rules in place that were to prevent someone from taking a firearm to work and also discharging a firearm within 150 feet of a building within city limits. But that didn't prevent the shooting at Building 2, not to even mention the law against murder. The city's ordinances and laws are only feel-good measures that will inevitably keep law-abiding citizens wondering if first responders will arrive in time to protect them. Each gun control restriction placed upon the people only adds to the plethora of existing laws to keep gun controls out of law-abiding people's hands. Tighter and tighter gun control restrictions across the country have not prevented or stopped mass shootings. However, it does get the government closer to its goal of confiscation, leaving the people completely defenseless and dependent on the government. Tonight, it seems the City Council has the magic answer to stop the next shooting the city will face. You know yourselves that the restrictions already in place hindered the inalienable rights of the people and did nothing to prevent tragedy. Where does the infringement end? We are always told what we can't do, where we can't do it. We are told what you want to further restrict, but you never tell us when and where you will allow us the privilege to save our own lives. I stand here as a survivor of violent crime, as a mother who has protected her baby during a violent attack involving a knife, helpless. I hope the city begins to appreciate my will to survive without continuous restraints being imposed upon myself and the rest of the citizens, and respect our rights to defend our lives, not expect us to cower in corners. Do you really think that we believe you will just stop at banning firearms just in buildings? If your argument is based on the fact that someone didn't follow laws and killed people when people are being killed in the city outside of these buildings on the regular basis, gun rights are still women's rights. They are my rights, and there are many of us who won't just let them be taken away as quickly as some hope. Just because some choose to not be trained doesn't mean others of us aren't trained professionally already.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Gary Mueller. Gary Mueller. Douglas Peterson.
Welcome.
Good evening, all. Good evening. I don't know about you, but I feel kind of browbeat right now, listening to everybody speaking. I'm sure you've been up here listening to all this. You probably browbeat too. I'm going to make mine short and sweet. I'm against the resolution to get a bill to carry against carrying firearms in public buildings. I've been around in Virginia Beach since 1971. I've seen it before the preemption laws, after the preemption laws, and right now we have the best way to go with the preemption laws. Don't change it. I think Governor Northam is wrong in trying to change it. I think you're wrong in trying to change it. It's a bad way to go because we end up with a smattering of changes here, changes there, and all it does is end up getting people that are lawfully carrying a firearm in trouble because they walk in not knowing that this locality has this law, that locality has that law. It's silly. It doesn't do anybody any good. As many people have pointed out, the business about not having people, law-abiding citizens, not carrying a firearm into the building is not going to help anyone. It's the bad guys that don't pay attention to your proposition, what will become a law. They ignore it. That's why they're bad guys. They ignore laws. So let's not make this mistake and revert ourselves back about 30 years. It doesn't do any good. One good guy with a gun would have stopped that guy on May 31st. He may have gotten 1 or 2 people killed, but he would have stopped 10. And that's the point. One person carrying legally could have stopped him. And just like the lady that I don't remember her name, her husband pointed out that she wanted to carry that day, but because of city, I forget what you call it, but not ordinance, but
Policy.
Policy. city policy. She did not carry it, and it cost her her life. And she could have stopped him. She was proficient with firearms. She could have stopped him. And that just pisses me off, excuse my French, but it really pisses me off that that guy wasn't stopped by a law-abiding citizen with a gun. He went around and killed 12 people because of city policy.
Thank you, sir.
Doug Peterson. Douglas Peterson. And after Mr. Peterson is Rob Dunley.
Welcome, sir.
Mr. Mayor, City Council, my name is Doug Peterson. I'm a member of the Virginia Citizens Defense League. I live in Newport News, and I came over here to relate a couple of incidents in the past that might help you decide that you should probably not pursue this resolution. In October of 1991, a mass shooting occurred at Luby's Cafeteria in Killeen, Texas. A man drove his pickup truck through the front of the facility, jumped out and began shooting patrons, focusing on women. The murder of 2 elderly patrons among those killed that day was witnessed by their daughter, Susanna Hupp, who had left her handgun in her car, as Texas law forbade the carry of firearms in restaurants that served alcohol. She chose not to violate the law because she feared that if caught, she would lose her chiropractor's license. Texas law left her defenseless. It's since been changed. In November 2012, an armed individual known as the Fake Beard Bandit entered an AutoZone store in York County, Virginia. He forced all employees at gunpoint into a back room, then ordered the manager to give him the cash and the business. One employee, Devin McLean, who had been among the victims in a prior robbery attempt, had brought his handgun to work that day but left it in his car. AutoZone policy prohibited employees from being armed on the premises. While the robber was occupied with the manager, McLean exited by a back door, retrieved his handgun, returned and confronted the robber. McLean told the robber, "Freeze! Drop your gun!" The shocked criminal raised his hand, still holding his gun, and ran. While the store manager was extremely grateful, AutoZone fired McLean for violating company policy, which had denied these folks the ability to defend themselves. Mr. McLean received national attention on this heroic action, multiple job offers, and a commendation from the York County Sheriff. How many lives might have been saved on May 31st if Kate Nixon had been allowed to bring her handgun to the city that day? We'll never know. Clearly, the city's no-carry policy didn't save any lives. The first responders to every crime are always the victims. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Rob Donnelly. And then the next speaker is Bill Tahanic.
Welcome.
Good evening, Mayor. Members of City Council, I'm Robert Donnelly, and I'm a 10-year, as we say, resident of Virginia Beach. Prior to that, in New York City, I was involved in emergency operations preparations because I have fire department and then security work. And what we did was real simple. And I hear tonight 2 different situations here. The city employees want to have weapons, obviously, when they're qualified. I don't see a problem with that. The other issue is being ignored, which is the crazies in the public coming into a public building and causing trouble, okay? Simply, if you secure your lobby, and I believe you were heading in that direction, Ms. Wooten, you secure your lobby technologically. We have stuff on a shelf. You don't even have to create anything. It's already there. We could put a detector in this room that will show all of you who's carrying a gun in a pattern to me in security room, okay? And I would go nicely to you and say, would you please give up your gun? Okay. What we're saying here is give the city people whatever they want. Modify your thing. There's plenty of talk going on here. Let them have what they want. It makes sense to me. I have a weapon, not on me. You know why I didn't carry a weapon tonight? Because the police have what we call a cop eye. He looked at me and I looked at him, and he knew I was relaxed, okay? Someone who means bad, they're not going to be relaxed. The blood pressure's up, the eyes are not making contact, and that's what cops know. And I very much appreciate the police, okay? They're professionals. A lot of guys here, even with their military training, are not professionals. They like to carry their gun, and with age, we age, and sometimes our this position might take over, okay? We don't need weapons to come into your place to get a permit. It's that simple, okay? Thank you.
Thank you.
Bill Tahanchuk. And then the next speaker is Andrew Jackson. Tahanchuk, yes.
Welcome, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, Councilman, Councilwoman. I just wanted to express my favor of the resolution. One of the reasons why I wanted to express being in favor of it is I think that we need to do at least something. To say we do nothing, to say we sit back and we watch and we say, oh, what a shame that May 31st happened, and we can't do anything about it because we have certain rights under the amendments, the right to carry arms. All in favor of that. Absolutely all in favor. In favor of defending my own home. I'll absolutely do whatever I need to do if someone's coming to my house and defend and save my family and keep my 3 little girls safe and my wife safe. I believe that a public building such as this has every right to defend it and to keep the people inside of it safe. I don't necessarily believe that having all the employees within the building would be, and the ability to carry a gun, because you may have, out of 400 employees, you may have 3 people that actually do it. So what happens on floor number 1, number 2, number 3, when those people aren't carrying, and they finally get to that somebody? I would think that there would be some sort of hybrid of this resolution that would make sense. Some sort of thing where, yes, we have armed security at the front. Maybe we do have a metal detector. We're not asking people to give up their guns forever. We're asking people to give up their weapons while they're visiting, while they're here. And I also believe that those employees that are coming to work for the city, they do sign on at will to give up their firearms when they're here in the building during those hours. If they don't like that, there's no reason why they have to stay here and work for the city. They can go work somewhere else where they can carry a firearm. But to say that we're going to do nothing, to say that we're going to take ourselves a step backwards, I think it would be injustice for this city, for the people that died, for the people that are surviving in that building and in all the other buildings in this municipal center and in the city for that matter. I have a friend who is an engineer. He travels all up and down the East Coast. He said Virginia Beach is the only place that he goes in to get a permit where he doesn't have to go through a metal detector, where he doesn't have to sign in, where he doesn't have to identify himself to get a permit across the East Coast. We're not talking New York only. We're not talking Connecticut where the laws are much more strict. We're talking up and down the East Coast he travels, and in the Midwest. So I think we need to have some sort of common sense approach. And I also think that we need to find some way to talk about the mental health crisis, as someone's already mentioned, as one of the root causes of this, one of the root causes of that.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Andrew Jackson. And after Mr. Jackson is Brian Clark.
Welcome, Andrew.
Good evening, council members. Woulda, coulda, shoulda. That's what I heard. Woulda, coulda, shoulda. If this, if that, it wasn't that. I heard people say, if somebody had a gun, if we'd had a gun, I'll ask any one of those 2 officers back there, would they want to run into a building with 50 people running around with a gun? Who's the bad guy? Which one of them is going to shoot each other because they think the other guy's the bad guy? I heard people say, oh, I'm a member of the armed forces. I served from the end of Korea to the end of Vietnam. Been there, done that. And the killing fields are not fun. We do not need everybody running around with a gun, and the next thing you know, the first person next to them ticks them off, and they decide to shoot the person working with them. No, we don't need that. We need security for the building. We need a way to protect the people in the building and the people coming to the building. Woulda, coulda, shoulda, don't get it. Most people here walk. I've been to city council meeting, I don't know how many times. I've never seen Showtime. Everybody walking in here like Wyatt Earp. I've never seen so many guns come into this city council. So why didn't they carry them then? It wasn't safe then, it wasn't safe now. Woulda, coulda, shoulda. The fact is, we have an issue. This is a way to at least address safety. Why not do it? Those people said, well, if there'd been one good person with the gun, he might have been the first person shot. Now what we gonna do? Common sense. And I salute and I applaud this council to even consider making this a safe place. Let's get this done. Never mind the woulda, coulda, shoulda. We've had enough of woulda, coulda, shoulda. Thank you.
Brian Clark. Brian Clark.
Welcome.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of council. Many of you might know me. I do work for the city. I hadn't intended to speak tonight, but I felt compelled to after hearing other fellow employees step up. This is a complicated problem that we find ourselves in right now, and there is no easy solution to it. What is being proposed impacts not just the public who come and see us every day, it also impacts the people who work here every day. It's not purely a constituent issue. It is an issue that impacts the 7,000 plus people who work here. And as commendable as some of those people were who ran into that building on May 31st, God bless them, it took them 4 minutes to get there. Certainly we are playing what if at this point. And yes, what if there had been someone there with a gun? Would he or she have made a difference? We don't know. Would they have slowed them down? Maybe. I just think there needs to be a bigger conversation than throwing blind support behind a piece of legislation that may or may not pass. That's all I have to say. Thank you for your time.
Thanks.
That's all the speakers, sir.
Okay, Ms. Wooten, Mr. Tower?
Would you like to make a statement, or? You can make one, and I can make one too, if you'd like.
Okay. I move the adoption of the resolution, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, second.
I second that. Certainly would like to read a statement if I could.
Yes, you can.
I want to say thank you for, the feedback and the passion regarding this very serious matter. This tragic event has left us vulnerable, and this led me to start thinking about our current security measures and how we could be more proactive. Now, I cannot say that the resolution would have stopped the tragedy on May 31st, because I don't know that. But how can we be more proactive? This is not a discussion about the Second Amendment right to bear arms, a right that was enacted to create a militia to protect the state. No one can point to anything that demonstrates I have ever said anything like that. This is not about arming employees to go to work. I too did some research, and you can take statistics and be for or against, but I did find statistics that did not demonstrate that this was an effective course of action. I too saw an FBI study of 160 active shooting incidents from 2000 to 2013 that found only one was stopped by an individual with a valid firearms permit. But in contrast, there were 21 incidents that were stopped by unarmed citizens. Of the 156 mass shootings that occurred from 2009 to 2016, only 10% occurred in so-called gun-free zones. The majority of these shootings, 63%, occurred in private homes. We must create a work environment that is safe and protected for our staff and our citizens. Staff members should be able to not be able to be concerned about bringing a gun to work to protect themselves. Their only concern should be to come into a safe environment, work in a peaceable manner as they try and trust us as leaders to ensure that their environment is safe. The workplace is a place of work, not a war zone or a place of confusion. I have only been on council for about 8 months. For me, this is not about politics. It's not political grandstanding. This is not a political matter to me. It's a human matter that must be addressed now. The urgency is today, not 2 weeks from now or 2 months from now. The time to act is now. This is a discussion about a tragedy that landed on our front steps. No one saw it coming, but I believe it must be addressed. I also believe the cost of doing nothing is far immeasurably worse. We must do something. We must focus, in my opinion, on a proactive plan that includes the following, and one of those resolutions was approved tonight: assessing the current safety measures and make improvements where needed. For example, with metal detectors. 2, prohibit the sale of large magazines and silencers. 3, consider mental health and evaluate wellness programs and make improvements where needed. 3, ensure the proper protocol is followed when certain behaviors are exhibited. 5, evaluate the promotion process. 6, you can train employees for defensive training. 7, control where weapons go in public buildings. This resolution tells the General Assembly that our city should be the authority or have the authority to ban weapons in government buildings. But I would like to make sure that we understand that this is not about a resolution to take the Second Amendment right away. It's based on being more proactive. Thank you.
Okay, discussion? Mr. Tower.
I'd like to thank everyone who appeared tonight and spoke so eloquently about their opinions, of which are obviously quite divergent on this issue. And I appreciate that everybody here respects the Constitution and the laws of the United States and the Commonwealth of Virginia, and I do too. But laws can be changed, and when the safety and security of the employees and the citizens who visit our public buildings are at stake, I think City Council, as a City Councilman, I felt compelled to join in this resolution. I do not want to have anything that violates anyone's Second Amendment rights. I do want employees to be safe and secure in buildings in Virginia Beach, just as they are in state buildings and federal buildings in many other places. This is not a radical idea. The courthouse right down the street has similar restrictions against guns. I hope the council will vote in favor of this, but this session in the General Assembly that's coming up is a very important one. I think it's important that Virginia Beach, the largest city in the state, take a lead in expressing that the time has come for localities to be able to make their own decisions about how best to protect themselves. I want my police chief and my city manager and my fellow councilmen to make that decision, and not 140 people in Richmond. Thank you, sir.
Okay. Discussion, Jessica.
Many of you follow me on Facebook, and I made a post earlier this morning on my feelings on this resolution. Council has had a long-standing policy that we do not vote on things without discussion, and my primary concern on this, while I am a firm believer in the Second Amendment, and a speaker made note of an organization I founded and ran for many years that taught women how to defend themselves. I do not think we are doing our due diligence as a body by voting on this 17 days after a tragedy. We need to discuss all possible solutions, and we need to engage the public, and we need to engage each other. We have had no briefing on what happened on May 31st as a body. We cannot diagnose a problem without a brief. It is like going to the doctor and saying, yes, I'm sick, here's some drugs. I would like to move for an indefinite deferral until we as a body and the public have had time to vet this issue thoroughly, and I'd submit that as a substitute motion.
I'll second that.
Yeah, we have a substitute motion and a second. Mr. Wood.
Thank you. I have to tell you, I understand the desire to do something. Everybody wants to do something. That's part of what makes Virginia Beach great. Everybody is concerned about what happened, and the fact that everybody is here tonight just speaks volumes as to, you know, how great our city is and how we come together on these things. I listened closely to everyone, but I have to tell you, I kept going back to the folks in this row and over there who worked in Building 2 and work for the city. And the comments that I heard repeatedly, and I took notes, we need to sit at a table together to make a decision. We need to find real solutions. If our goal is to do something rather than make you feel better, then we need to work through this. It's irresponsible to do this before the conversation even starts. And these are comments that I wrote down. I may have botched the order of the words a little bit, but these are comments that our city employees who work in these buildings are making comments. And David and Chris and the rest of you guys, I mean, you know, I feel for you. I know you lost friends and colleagues there. And I can't imagine how difficult it's been for you. You know, there is a process, and Jessica's absolutely right. This council hasn't discussed this. This is too big of an issue for us to have dropped in, frankly, after we had our agenda meeting. So, I mean, our agenda meeting's on Wednesday. This shows up on the agenda on Thursday, and we've had no discussion on it. So I agree with what Jessica says. There is a process to do this. This is too big of an issue to look at, and frankly, we need to do things that are going to solve the issue. And regardless of what your position is on guns and buildings and that sort of thing, it really has not a lot to do with that. So,
okay, Mr. Bellucci.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to begin by thanking everyone who made time to be here and share their thoughts with us this evening. No matter what your position, I truly appreciate the enthusiasm and engagement for your point of view and for participating in this very important discussion. I would like to associate myself with the remarks of Council Members Abbott and our Vice Mayor Wood. To say that my view is that we need a more complete discussion of this issue before we make recommendations to the General Assembly. I also am of the position that when I applied to serve on this body, I emphasized the importance that I put on collaboration and on working together. And I do not, from my perspective, we didn't have the opportunity to collaborate on this discussion. If we had that opportunity, then I would have raised the issue of the importance of mental health services throughout the Commonwealth of Virginia. I think we need to have, if we're going to have a discussion about violence at municipal centers or throughout our society, this is a multifaceted, very complex issue. So my question is, why are we discussing this one piece of it? And why is the urgency now to move forward this one particular piece? Because it's a very complex, very multi-layered discussion. And so my view is we need to have that discussion. And so let's do that. Let's collaborate to have that more complete discussion. And so that would be my request.
Okay, Ms.
Thank you.
Wooten and then Ms. Henley.
I'd like to answer Councilmember Berlucci's question, why the urgency now? And also address Councilwoman Abbott's concern about process and collaboration. Those are all things I agree with. The expedience of this matter is at the forefront because the General Assembly meets July 9th. And so that's why, once this issue came up, there's a timeline that you have to address to make sure that the governor receives that recommendation prior to July 9th. So, but for that fact, there would have been more discussion. I'd also like to make note also, as I did earlier in the workshop, I attended the Virginia Municipal League Committee, Legislative Committee, about 13 days. Well, actually, it wasn't even 13 days. It was probably about 6 or 7 days after the tragedy. And they were discussing gun legislation because of what happened in Virginia Beach. So they felt that it was time to do it and to do it right away. And so at that meeting, they discussed it. There was a healthy, conversation about what they should do. And so right then and there, they moved on approving legislation to ban weapons in government buildings. And all but only one person voted against it. So there was a sense of urgency then, as it is here now. And so to your question, that's why it was addressed the way that it was. But I'm absolutely in favor of collaboration and discussing these measures as you should. But if it's deferred, or will you defer it within that time period to get that recommendation to the governor by July 9th? Otherwise, there's no point.
Mrs. Henley and then Mr. Moss.
Well, I believe we had 31 people speak, and I think I agreed with all of you. As each person was speaking, I know you were speaking from the heart, and even though maybe you were saying the opposite as far as what this resolution should be, I think we all have the same feeling, and that's that something's very wrong, and we really need to address this. And yeah, I'm mad, and it's time to do something. We really do have to address what's going on, not only with this event, but what's happening all over. Something's just got to change. But I also feel that, we really have to address this situation from our perspective very carefully, because it's raw. We experienced it, and we have people who experienced it in horrific ways, and we can't just make a knee-jerk decision, as somebody said. We really have to explore all of the options. We really have to give it time. I did hear Reverend Cox when he was talking about the event during his son's funeral, and he said, we can't just talk, we've got to do something. And he discussed the laws, and maybe there are changes, and Virginia Beach needs to talk about those changes. And I know Virginia Beach is the largest city in the state, and we need to participate with the General Assembly, but we've got a unique situation here. I don't think we have to do it just to do it. I think we really have to spend some time. I think our employees deserve that time to let us hear from them, to talk about it, to work on it together. I think what Mr. Bellucci said is very right. What Ms. Wooten and Mr. Tower said is right. We all kind of want the same thing. We just don't quite know how to get there yet. So I really think that this needs to just be the beginning. I'm afraid that if we were to just pass this resolution tonight, we would think that we had done it. I would really like for this to be the beginning of a lot of conversation from a lot of angles. And I don't want anybody who spoke tonight to think that we didn't listen to you, because I think we did. And I think by seeing this diversity of comments, we know we've got a lot of diversity to look at. Everyone made very good comments and very good positions, and we need to consider it all.
Thank you. Mr. Moss.
I do appreciate everybody come out. This has been one of the most robust and I think diverse conversations we've had with the public in a long time in this room. And I hope someone's taping this. Would be great for a government class to watch, to see just how people can have a civil conversation about very sincere differences about how government should pursue its actions. But I want to come back to one of the comments made to look at this resolution without the names. The governor is chief executive of our state, and one of his first responsibility is what? Public safety. And under the Constitution, he has a responsibility to make sure that every citizen enjoys the same level of public safety, no matter where they are in the Commonwealth. And it shouldn't be our option to decide what that standard is. If it's a state, we should have the option of how to comply with the standard. But a person in Suffolk should be the same person as Virginia Beach or Portsmouth or Fairfax County, and they have obviously banned weapons from state buildings by executive order and laws from schools. We don't get the option to have guns on school grounds. So I think, and sometimes it's easy for the General Assembly to say, well, I did my part, but then you didn't, because ultimately you're the responsible for setting the standard of public safety across the state. And the right of arms is a constitutional grant, and how that's restricted isn't something we should be deciding. Now, I think we can offer better insight into what we would do if they passed it and how we would comply. But I don't think the General Assembly should be let off the hook from making the fundamental decision of how they want to do that. And the reason why I mentioned that, because tonight it was mentioned that, militia was about state militias. Well, anyone who follows the Supreme Court knows when they ruled in the District of Columbia, the Supreme Court, for the first time in its history, ruled that the right to bear arms is an individual right, and militia doesn't mean just the state. That was the Supreme Court ruling. Now don't be clapping too much. With that aside, this isn't about the Second Amendment. This is about what the government, with its building and structures, ought to be able to do to ensure safety. I was just up in D.C. this weekend. I went to the Natural History Museum, and I went through a metal detector. What I also know is, if everybody doesn't go through one, including employees, you're still as vulnerable to the attack then. So if you're going to go and do something, I'm not saying what that is, but you're going to have point security that's 100% proof, then no one is exempted from going through these types of procedures, because then you're always vulnerable, because someone in the building can carry some kind of weapon. So when we get to those kind of discussions we talk about, it's going to be those, not this, thin stuff with the vague words, which is why the discussions are needed, but it's going to be, what are we going to do to give those words meaning, which is why I supported Mrs. Wooten's first resolution, because I think if we're going to go somewhere, that's how you get meaningful security. And that's the discussion we have to have. And I do believe strongly, if this is where we're going to go as a community, it should be a Commonwealth standard, and every citizen in the Commonwealth should be assured the same level of protection, and it shouldn't depend upon which city you live in. No matter where you are in the state, you can't take a gun into a courtroom. No matter where you live in the state, you can't take your gun into a school. Well, if we're going to have that, we ought to have a statewide standard, and the General Assembly members ought to stand up and have that debate, and we ought to help them have it, and we ought to participate. And that is my perspective, and I look forward to the conversation. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Anybody else at this point? Aaron.
To me, it's not about the Second Amendment. I believe in the Second Amendment wholeheartedly, to be quite honest. To me, this is about Virginia Beach. And we have experienced something and none of us thought we would have experienced. For me, it's my second time around. And we know we have veterans in here as well. The State, we elect the state officials to do their duty, to do their job. That's why you elected them. We're Dillon Rule State. So there has to be some guidance to come from there. But our focus should be here on our community. Here first and foremost. The work is here. The family's here. We haven't even completed our investigation yet. We haven't even called for an outside investigation yet, which families need, which we need to take that next step. Before we even start politicizing the gun aspect, let's take a look at ourselves first. Let's have this conversation with the workers first, see how they feel about going back in that building. Let's have a conversation with the families first. Let's get their guidance and input on it. To me, protecting our buildings, that's a common sense. It's really a no-brainer, really. We want to protect our buildings. But it's not the real subject matter here. Subject matter is, how are we living in our atmosphere? How are we coming and doing about our everyday business? Whether you're a gun owner or not, that's your right. I believe in that right. But it's about Virginia Beach. We experienced this. It's only been 2 weeks. And already we're like, oh, no guns. We should have guns. No. Let's take a second to heal first. Let's come up with the plan first. Let's have those discussions that we need instead of having this just dropped on us. First thing we need to do, let's finish this investigation. Let's have a private investigation. Let's talk to our workers. Let's talk to the families. Let's get their guidance and input. Let's let the state do their job. Call them for them to do their job. You all call on them. You voted them. You elected them. Call on them to give us the power to implement those things. But for now, Virginia Beach, let's focus on Virginia Beach. Let's heal first. Then we have these tough discussions. Believe it or not, we're all still healing.
Thank you. Anybody else? Let me say this. I am sincerely grateful to everybody in this office for the mutual respect and dignity that you showed each other in a very, very tough conversation. I sit here as your mayor and with my fellow council members and look at a gallery divided about concerned people that have differing viewpoints. We're asking a lot of questions that can't be answered right now, unfortunately. This is a very complex situation. It was a horrific situation. Speaking personally, no one ever aspires to be mayor and have to be going as the vice mayor and many people going to funerals and viewings after a horrific act of evil as we were subjected to as a city. And, the vice mayor and I had the duty over the horrific weekend to face the media quite a bit. And naturally, the question of, you certainly want, gun control now, don't you? And I'm going to be honest with you, I gave him an answer. Okay. And I said, my fear is that if we react too quickly, we're just going to wind up polarizing people and put them into opposite camps, like has been done over many of these other type of incidences. Our city, Virginia Beach, has joined a fraternity of cities that we never wanted to become members of. I think Mr. Wood said this. I had to speak to the mayor of Orlando, who went through a horrific situation where 47 people were killed and they're still dealing with it. And the many hundreds of people that were in that restaurant at that time are still dealing with the nightmares. We can't lose sight of what happened, with the victims, their families, those in the hospitals, and let's never lose sight of those who witnessed this horror, who are going to carry those memories for the rest of their life. But my fear, as I said over and over that first weekend, that if we react during a type of heightened emotion, that could act to polarize us, and I don't want to see that. And people say, well, we just talk about it. No, we got to communicate about it. And during one of the breaks that I had after reviewing, I went to speak to the mothers, demanding action, who are reasonable people that want to talk. And the first person that talked said, we have to have those conversations. We have to have meaningful conversation that is designed to have an outcome, that is designed to figure out what we have in common, that we will able to actually accomplish, not just divide us. And, the thing is, I don't want to use the term premature, but right now we are, and Aaron just said it, we are still grieving right now as a community. And the emotions are raw. And sometimes, and I've been in healthcare for 4+ decades, working with people at tough times. Making decisions during times of heightened emotion doesn't always produce the best results. So I'm saying, yeah, we got to take some time, but we also got to take some actions. I would like to talk to a number of the mayors in the other cities to find out, the lessons learned there. That's going to take some time. I wish the General Assembly, quite frankly, could have waited a little bit, once again, because we are grieving as a city, as a Commonwealth, and as a nation. But the conversation must be substantive going forward. It must be meaningful. And we're never going to find consensus on this, but by golly, we have to strive to consensus to make us a safe city, to make us a safe Commonwealth, to make us a safe nation. But that being said, I think, a lot of times that we have to put sometimes our feelings aside and use, there's a term, emotional intelligence and effective communication, and find out those things that we can agree on, to, that we can find a better way. But as of right now, my fear is that if we have this type of conversation, we're going to wind up further polarized and nothing is going to happen like it happened in so many cities in this country. So I will be supporting, the resolution to defer. Thank you. Okay. Are we ready for the vote?
So what's the vote, Mr. City Attorney?
Okay, are we voting on the substitute?
Well, really, a motion to postpone indefinitely is a subsidiary motion. If you pass it, it's just passed. So, yeah, that's what you vote on, the motion to postpone indefinitely right now.
Okay.
That'll be the
We're
only
voting
vote.
on the motion to postpone indefinitely.
By a vote of 8-2, you defer the resolution indefinitely.
Again, my sincere thanks to all the participants. Be assured the conversation will go forward. Thank you.
Henley would like to be recognized.
Could we determine some definite action that we'll be taking and maybe
I think
announce
we
that
should,
at
I
our
think we
next
should have that
workshop?
conversation among us, that's what we need right off
Could
the
we
bat.
have that next week? at
Yes,
our
we can.
workshop? Okay, just
We'll
so
make
they
that,
know we're not.
we'll make that agenda on the next workshop. All right, what's
We have,
item
We
eight?
have one more item.
7?
Okay, okay, thank you.
Is that 7?
No, we're not, we're still out of business.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yes, that is.
Everyone thinks it's over.
There's one speaker on that item. On which item are we talking about?
Sir, item
Sir.
7.
yeah, well, I don't know what they're doing.
Sandbridge
Yeah.
temporary.
Yes.
No, we're still.
No, sir, we're still in session.
You're just over.
We're just waiting for the gallery to clear.
Bobby.
We got one more, okay? Folks, can we clear the gallery, please, if you're leaving? We still have some business. Is it number 7?
Yes, sir. Ordinance to authorize temporary encroachment in a portion of city right of way.
Okay, item number 7.
Correct. This is the applicant's.
Folks, if we can please clear the gallery, and please, talk to each other out front. Find some common ground. Okay, Madam Clerk, I believe Item number 7, under ordinances and resolutions, ordinance to authorize a temporary encroachment into the portion city right-of-way known as Sand Fiddler Road adjacent to 3740 Sand Fiddler Road, Ray 4 existing block pillars and 2 existing block walls, deferred from May 21st, 2019.
Yes, Simeon Hambus.
Welcome.
Good evening. My name is Simin Hambaz. The purpose of this is, to our surprise, was that we had the letter. We received a letter for encroachment. Unfortunately, we were not aware of that at all. We bought. Let me tell you a little bit about ourselves. I'm a Canadian. We moved here. We bought our beautiful second home, our dream home. And we made many alterations with the permit from the city. And for every alteration, we went to the city, we asked for permit. And one of the permit was landscaping, which we went with the landscaper. He did color code the whole plan. We went through for the permit, and they saw it. They said pavers doesn't need permit. Fencing, decoration doesn't need permit. Gazebo does, pool does. All of those permits is required. We went through the process. For the seawall as well, we had all the permits in place, and the inspector, the landscaping started before everything else, before any work started. And on the final last inspection, a year later, when the inspector came by and it was almost done, the whole project, I pointed out that I had these pillars that as a decoration to put my flower pot. And the inspector looked at it after a year going, it's in right of way. And I said, it's been here, you were here so many times, and we went to the city, and it was all with the landscaper, and all the money that was spent to build it, you guys were a part of this. You saw it. And it was not disapproved, we were not told anything. And he says, nope, I'm not gonna, because it's in right of way. I said, how is that? They said it's more than 6 feet, almost near 7 feet away from the road. So I went to city and tried to understand it. They said it's danger to the public. I said, how is that? They said, because it's too close. I said, look at old sand fiddler, sandpiper, 10 inches away. They said, go and argue this point with bring this point with the real estate. We said, okay. We went to real estate. Real estate asked me to bring proofs. So I gathered about 50 homes, okay. 50 homes, and 22 photos were submitted due to the size, and the city received it.
Okay.
Real estate received it, and that's the reason I'm here. I'm sorry, this is my first time
Yep,
here.
Mr. Moss.
Is there a picture of this property that shows the encroachment in question? Is that, do you have it in the database so we can see what it is that we're talking about on a pictorial basis?
I would refer the council member to Exhibit A, sheet 1 of 1. It shows the dimensions associated with the boundaries of the property, the 11 feet 10 inches from the boundary of her access.
Well, I guess I'm
and
having a
the
hard time
six-
figuring out which of these things are the encroachment. I see a trash can.
It's the 2x2 block pillar.
Okay, she said flower pot. That's why I was confused, okay.
I use it for the
Okay.
decoration.
I got you.
That's
It's
the reason. I thought
cinder
I was
block
adding
pillar.
beauty.
That makes more sense. Okay, I was looking for a flower pot. That's why I asked, Mr. City Manager.
Mr. Wood.
Can I ask a question? So if I'm,
That's all.
Mr. Hanson or
Yes,
other members
sir.
of the staff, is it 11 foot 10 encroaching in the right of way, or what is it? Because it looks like the dimension shows at 11 feet, 10 inches. I assume that's a property line?
That is true, and it's 6 feet, 10 inches from the edge of the pavement.
Okay, so it's 11 feet, so it's almost 12 inches.
Yes, if you'll read the
Into
first
the
part
right
of
of
the ordinance, says that the encroachment extends approximately 11.10 feet, and it really should say 11 feet, 10 inches into the right-of-way known as Sandfield River.
Okay. And could I ask one more question?
Yes, please.
So, who did you get a permit for these pillars?
We went to the city, I took the landscaper to the city right at the beginning, the whole entire project. When I took him there, they went through the whole gazebo, this and that. They said that it's not required for the pavers, it's not required for the fencing, it's not required for decoration, so we said, okay. And then we were looking at all sand fiddler, there were pillars like 10 inches or rocks or the whole city of Virginia Beach has so many pillars, like almost right on the road. So ours is over 6 feet away from the road. So our understanding was, and the permit department said, it's not a problem because you don't need it, because it's pavers. It's on the pavers and it's decoration.
But these aren't pavers, these are pillars.
Pillars made of pavers. Yeah.
How tall are they?
4 feet.
Thank you.
Okay, anybody else?
Are there other properties that have
Yes.
similar, so she's not the only one?
No, hundreds.
On Sandfield Road?
On Sandra Fiddler, I have 22 that I took pictures and I gave it to the real estate. And in Virginia Beach, drove I didn't even finish yet. There are over hundreds of homes. If I start, you're talking about thousands.
How long has it been there?
A year, more than a year.
More than a year. So this was constructed a year ago?
The whole alteration started in more than a year, but almost 2 years. The construction started in beginning of 2018.
And question,
Excuse me, sorry about that. Beginning of 2017, yeah, beginning of 2017.
And you say you got permission from, you got permission from the city to construct these?
All of everything that we did for the city, not the landscaping, no. But I'm saying every other work that was done in the house, the pavers, the pool, the seawall, every step of the way. We went to the city, we got permit for. And I took the landscaper to the city, and he color-coded everything. We described it, and they said, you don't need it.
Mr. Mayor.
Jess?
Bobby, how far back would they have to be normally?
Typically, something like this would be considered a fence, so they could have something on their property. Staff, when I reviewed the permits just now, they reviewed on the property. This was caught during the inspection as they were closing their permits as being an encroachment into the public right-of-way.
Right, but how far, if we were to move it, where would we have to move it?
Have to come back onto the property, which would be 11 feet.
It's on their property now.
Oh, I see, okay.
it's on-
And is it one of them or three of them? Three of them.
You saying it's not on their property now?
It's on the right of way, not the easement.
It's on city
That's the
property.
difference. It's not the easement, it's the right of way. Yeah. That's correct. Oh.
I will clarify that in order to obtain a permit to legally install this, it would have to be on the property. If they were to apply for an encroachment, as Mr. Wheeler noted, Public Works would be comfortable with it being. Well, it's 8 feet.
Would he come up, please, please come up
Yeah,
to the
please come up
microphone.
and give us an explanation.
Just go to the microphone right
They
next.
don't work.
Yeah.
They're not working? Oh, I'm sorry. What good are they?
This for
While
sure.
we're building a new building.
Yeah.
Okay, so actually, it needs to be at least 8 feet in order to meet the clear zone requirements because it is a fixed object. It's not a breakaway.
Can you describe, can you
So
explain
it's-
what that means? Clear
That
zone,
means
breakaway.
it would be like if it was a wooden nail post or something and you hit it would break away, or a fiberglass pole. This is a brick structure. So it's actually a column, that's not considered a breakaway. So if a car was to run off the shoulder and become errant, it would break it and snap off. But in this case, it's a brick column, so it's not considered that. So she's 6'10", and the requirement that came back was 8 feet.
But Mike, on that road, how many other structures are like that on that
We
road?
have, well, there's many structures.
So are we gonna be removing every last one of them?
Oh, yes, sir. May I respond?
Yes, Mr. Harrison.
So we have historically been reactive across all portions of the city when encroachments are brought to the staff's attention. We don't patrol, we don't write people up. We unless there's an accident or a safety hazard, like a bush is hanging out or a tree limb, we'll take action where we notice a safety. But when it's complained about, when it's brought to the attention of staff, we have an obligation to research it, to investigate it, and if it's found to be an encroachment, to notify the owner that they have 30 days to remove it. If not, we have several actions of enforcement that can lead to as severe as a $100 fine a day almost. So the reality here is this applicant has brought to our attention, you saw in a letter that I provided you in your Friday packet, that she has notified us of 20, I believe there were 20 on that list, of encroachments on Sandfield Road. And so we are in the process of responding to that notification now. And when we find those encroachments, we'll be notifying 20 homeowners that they have in violation of the exact same thing that we're dealing with today.
Okay, Ms. Henley, then Mr. Moss.
Well, I think that as I have viewed it, in both Sandpiper and Sandfiddler, there have been sometimes some landscaping that maybe went into the right-of-way and that kind of thing. And I think we have kind of said to the folks, particularly along Sandpiper, that, you know, if we're going to do that bike trail again, those encroachments are going to have to go. I think that's sort of been a general kind of thing that, you know, that's for sure. But these are substantial pillars that present a pretty definite safety hazard. And for us to grant this and say that these encroachments are acceptable, we would be granting something that's a safety hazard. We haven't granted these other encroachments, and I doubt any of them are pillars like this. But now they will be looked at. I think there are 18 here on Sandfiddler and Sandpiper Road, and one on North Witch Duck Road. And so our inspectors will be looking at those. But if we were to approve this encroachment, we're approving a safety hazard, and I don't think we can do that.
May I add? May I?
Yes.
Mr. Mayor.
Yep.
There are pillars over 5 feet, 6 feet in city of Virginia Beach. And we just have to go through them. There are so many pillars. And they're there, they've been there, hundreds. And when I'm the one that brought my pillar to the inspector's attention at the end of the project. I said, I plan to put a flower pot here. And he goes, oh, let me think about it. And he went and goes, no, it's now, this isn't right away. If that's the case, then all of Virginia Beach needs to be inspected. I am told that you don't have enough staff to do that. And now that I brought 22 and I have hundreds more, they're going to be looked at. I'm not working for City of Virginia Beach. That's not my job. What I did was for decoration. Safety is not, I'm over 6 feet away from the road. How can that be danger? There are far more dangerous things going on than this 6 feet away from the road, my pillar being away from the road. I think there are far more dangerous stuff that is going on in the city that we need to focus on instead of the
John?
Only point I was going to make, when I used to live on Glen Road in Thalia, someone put some rocks because it's a non-curb neighborhood, and they put rocks on their corners, and someone drove off into the ground and ran into those rocks and damaged their car and damaged themselves, and they ended up having a six-figure damage claim against the liability of the homeowner because they had a unauthorized encroachment, and therefore they were liable for the damage done to the vehicle, even though the person ran off the road because the encroachment. So people sometimes don't realize the liability they might be assuming. Now, I think what Ms. Henley's saying, we can't consciously take on that liability independent of what other infractions that, what we know, we have to act on. And I think that was the manager's point. If he knows, we have a liability. If we don't know, we have somewhat of a defense.
Then let's start it right from the beginning, then all of Virginia Beach. If that's what we're going to do, then let's do it right. Don't
Is that
pick
my
and choose.
recommendation?
Well, I don't want to interrupt her, but when she is finished and sits
Okay.
down, we'll make a motion.
I believe if we're going to do that, mine is 6 feet away. There are 10 inches, homes with 10 inches, rocks, stone, pillars, all of that. If you're going to do that, let's just start from all of Virginia Beach, and I'm told, oh, we don't have the staff. Thank you for giving us 22 homes. No, you have a responsibility. If you're going to do that, take mine away, then take everyone's away. I'm hoping you will consider over 5 feet, it's okay, it's exempted.
Okay?
She finished?
Yes, she is.
Is she going to sit
Thank
down?
you.
Okay, you can
Thank
sit
you.
down now,
Thank you
please.
very much.
Well, clearly, we do have encroachments, but they are not, those encroachments that we have approved, we have reviewed, and they have an approved encroachment. But as she says, I'm sure that there are many encroachments that have not been approved. And I don't really think that we can approve an encroachment if it shows that it's an extension into a fixed object located 6 feet 10 inches from the edge of the travelway in the encroachment, and one of the block pillars is placed within 2 feet from an existing sanitary sewer lateral, and if excavation of the sewer lateral is needed, Public Utilities will not assume responsibility for damage or replacement of the structure, and so forth. The fact that it's a parking issue, and as it says here, although parking is prohibited along this portion of Sand Fiddler Road, the encroachment is a fixed object within the clear zone of the travelway that is intended for safe recovery by errant vehicles. Knowing all of that, I simply could not recommend approval of this, and so therefore I will recommend denial.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second.
Mr. Tower, may I have your vote, please? Thank you.
Yeah.
By a vote of 9-1, the application has been denied.
Okay. Okay, we have no appointments this evening. Is there any unfinished business? Any new business? We are adjourned.
Great job, Mr. Mayor.